Want to call this meeting of the Plan Commission to order. Ms. Andel, may I have a roll call?
Mr. Ash. Ms. Bindum.
Here.
Mr. Fell.
Here.
Mr. Fitch.
Here.
Mr. Hopkins.
Here.
Mr. Otto.
Here.
Ms. Stake.
Here.
And Ms. Yuba Bant.
We do have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
The minutes. Get a motion. We'll approve. We are looking at the minutes of November 7th concerning a property that had requested a conditional use permit and a rezoning, and then the meeting that, thank you, Mr. Fell, for pinch hitting and opening these cases so we could proceed today. Moved by Ms. Upabant. Second by Mr. Fell. Any changes? Nope. All in favor of approving these minutes signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed? The minutes are passed. Communications?
There was a letter regarding Plan Case 2216 SU 13, which I think Plan Commission received all of those.
Yes. This is a communication that hopefully everyone got to see from, I believe it's an attorney representing Allied Waste, who is a neighbor to the property that we're going to consider in the first hearing, in which the asphalt recycling and construction recycling permit is going to be requested. A conditional use to enable that eventually is going to be requested, I should say. The letter is strongly opposed at this time, essentially because the application, in the opinion of the person who wrote the letter, is premature for a variety of reasons. And is this going to be made available as part of the record?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you. Well, I won't belabor the points. Hopefully everyone got to read them. Essentially, it has to do with the timing of this request versus Illinois EPA permit, and then a final special use permit that would have to precede the facility actually coming in. There's also some concerns about site remediation and environmental problems resulting from dust and debris and so forth. So with that, I will move on to Plan Case 2216 SU 13, request by Southwind RAS LLC for a special use permit and a conditional use permit to allow two uses on Lot 910 and 1000 West Saline Court in the Heavy Industrial Zoning District.
All right. Thank you.
Before we get started, are we considering a special use permit tonight or just a conditional use permit?
This is a request for both. The conditional use permit is wrapped into the special use permit approval.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Please.
Sure. So yeah, it's a request by Southwind RAS LLC. They're planning on developing an asphalt shingle recycling facility and disposal, and they have a plan on operating a construction waste recycling facility, which will require EPA and city approvals down the road. So this request is just for the Southwind facility to recycle asphalt shingles, again, mostly on 1000, but also a little bit on 910. And that's the reason we're bringing forward, or ask them to go ahead and bring forward their conditional use permit request along with the special use permit request, is because there will be two uses on the 910 property down the road. And the special use permit is required for a recycling.
Are we considering a special use permit tonight or just a conditional use permit?
This is a request for both. The conditional use permit is wrapped into the special use permit approval.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Please.
Sure. So yeah, it's a request by Southwind RAS LLC. They're planning on developing an asphalt shingle recycling facility at 910 and 1000 West Salem Court in the IN2 Heavy Industrial Zoning District. The facility will consist of asphalt shingle shredding equipment and storage of those materials. The operation will take place primarily on 1000 West Salem Court, but a part of the operations will also be on 910 West Salem Court. It's located at the northwest edge of the city. Basically, there's one parcel north of this in the city. That's it. Okay. 1000 West Salem Court is 2.283 acres in area. 910 West Salem Court is 6 acres. Hence, they need to spill over onto 910. The area is industrial and agricultural in nature. You can see to the north, there's agricultural uses. To the west, there's an asphalt plant and a waste transfer station. Further south to the west, there's more recycling centers. To the east, there's some vacant land. So this request is just for the Southwind facility to recycle asphalt shingles. Again, mostly on 1000, but also a little bit on 910. And that's the reason we're bringing forward, or ask them to go ahead and bring forward their conditional use permit request along with the special use permit request, is because there will be 2 uses on the 910 property down the road. And the special use permit is required for a recycling facility in the IN2 district. So the Plan Commission should review the special use permit and conditional use permit applications and make recommendation to City Council. A little bit of background. These 2 parcels were created for future land use. The comprehensive plan shows the future alignment of Lincoln Avenue. And there's residential is, rural residential is designated for areas further to the east, but those areas are pretty far from this site. Okay, so let me pull up the site plan. We have 2 site plans. One's a concept plan and one's a engineering plan. Okay. Let me kind of 283 acres in area. 910 West Salem Court is 6 acres. Hence, they need to spill over onto 910. The area is industrial and agricultural in nature. You can see to the north, there's agricultural uses. To the west, there's an asphalt plant and a waste transfer station. Further south to the west, there's more recycling centers. To the east, there's some vacant land, which is kind of natural near the saline ditch. But otherwise, there's more agriculture to the east. And looking at the current zoning, these parcels are zoned IN2 heavy industrial, as is everything. The operation consists of a large paved area with 5 stages, and this is how they'll process the materials through these 5 stages. The applicant is here, so they will talk a bit more perhaps about the different stages, but it just involves bringing in materials and bringing in equipment occasionally to process the materials and moving them from stage to stage in piles. Let's see. see, I mentioned these yellow and blue areas are going to be paved. The blue area will be asphalt. The yellow area will be is designated for areas further to the east, but those areas are pretty far from this site. Okay, so let me pull up the site plan. We have two site plans. One's a concept plan and one's a engineering plan. Okay. Let me kind of zoom out here to start. So looking from a zoomed out view, you can see there's a driveway to the southern end of the site. Let me zoom in. Okay, yeah, going from south to north, the driveway from the southern end, there should be a landscape buffer of 1 tree and 3 bushes for every 40 feet of that fence. Okay. I mentioned access from Saline Court. The access will be shared with Henson Disposal, and they will have the southern edge of the site. Just a little bit about the Henson Disposal site. It's they will be coming in next year for their permitting requirements. Their operation will be construction, waste, recycling. So they will talk a bit more, perhaps, about the different stages. But it just involves bringing in materials and bringing in equipment occasionally to process the materials and moving them from stage to stage in piles. Let's see. I mentioned these yellow and blue areas are going to be paved. The blue area will be asphalt. The yellow area will be a recycled asphalt product. In terms of zoning requirements, the site plan does meet most zoning requirements. Setbacks in the industrial zoning district are 25 feet for the front yard. Those are met. The other setback, more rigorous review of special use permits. We've been advised by the legal division in the past that we can do these concurrently through just one process. And this is something that has been done in the past with actually with another recycling center. So for a special use permit, there are a couple 3 key criteria that we analyze. The first one is that the proposed use is convenient to the public or conducive to the public convenience at that location. Subject property is in the North Lincoln Avenue Industrial Park. This is the area of the city where our heavy industrial uses are located. I mentioned access from Saline Court. The access will be shared with Henson Disposal, and they will have the southern edge of the site. Just a little bit about the Henson Disposal site. It's they will be coming in next year for their permitting requirements. Their operation will be construction, waste, recycling. It'll be a multi-phase approval. They'll need a local siting approval, which was incorrectly identified in the memo as going through IEPA first. It actually will be approved by the city for review for ground or water contaminants from the process. And dust will be controlled with spraying the materials with water during the recycling process. I'm sure the applicant will go into more detail about their requirements and their efforts to avoid pollution from this use. The applicant is seeking approval from the Illinois EPA for a beneficial use determination. And there's another type of pollutant or some kind of other pollutant or discharge permit that they'll need to get taken care of. And those will be, as a requirement of the special use, those would need to be actually with another recycling center. So for a special use permit, there are a couple, three key criteria that we analyze. The first one is that the proposed use is convenient to the public, or conducive to the public convenience at that location. Subject property is in the North Lincoln Avenue Industrial Park. This is the area of the city where our heavy industrial uses are located. There's asphalt plants, concrete recycling facilities, the waste transfer station. It's over 1,000 feet, about 1,200 feet from the nearest residence. And the site has convenient access to Interstate 74, and it will have access to the future Olympian Drive. Northern portion of 910 saline, is this going to be compatible with the second use? So for this part of the conditional use permit, really we asked for it to be brought forward at this time because we know Henson Disposal will be seeking approvals for their site and going through all those processes. But really it's important for the Southwind people to get the approvals so they know that they'll be allowed to continue operation on 910 or on a portion of 910 Saline Court. They want to know that they'll be able to continue their requirements and their efforts to avoid pollution from this use. The applicant is seeking approval from the Illinois EPA for a beneficial use determination, and there's another type of pollutant or some kind of other pollutant or discharge permit that they'll need to get taken care of. And those will be, as a requirement of the special use, those would need to be approved before operations could commence. Third criteria, proposed use conforms to applicable regulations and standards of and preserves the character of the district in which it's located. The IN2 heavy district will be all the approval for the special use and conditional use permits without any additional conditions. You may recommend approval with additional conditions to be deemed appropriate for public health, safety, and welfare. Or you may recommend denial of the proposed permits. Our recommendation tonight is for Plan Commission to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the following conditions. The first condition is that the development shall be constructed in general conformance with the attached site plan. The zoning administrator, really we asked for it to be brought forward at this time because we know Henson Disposal will be seeking approvals for their site and going through all those processes. But really it's important for the Southwind people to get the approvals so they know that they'll be allowed to continue operation on 910 or on a portion of 910 Saline Court. They want to know that they'll be able to continue that operation after Henson receives their approval. And so a conditional use is required for 2 recycling centers on the same lot. So we don't yet know much about the fourth and final condition, that the conditional use permit to allow 2 uses on 910 West Saline Court, it shall only be valid if a separate special use permit is issued to allow the Henson construction waste disposal facility. So that is the first part of the staff report. We will also have a presentation from the petitioner, but I think now we'd like to address the communications received about this case. You want to take it, Libby?
And we've really only just had a little.
To be deemed appropriate for public health, safety, and welfare, or you may recommend denial of the proposed permits. Our recommendation tonight is for Plan Commission to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation for approval, subject to the following conditions. The first condition is that the development shall be constructed in general conformance with the attached site plan. The zoning administrator shall have latitude to approve any minor changes that are substantially in conformance in case they're required to bring the site into compliance with development regulations, including building code, fire code.
Supervising that. It's been, I think, 13 or 14 years since we had a local siting, and that was for Allied Waste. So obviously, it's for a similar facility, and there could be concerns, from the nearby facility about the Henson facility. So that's something that, as we move forward in this more substantial review process, we'll learn much more about. There's another item in the letter that says that siting process somehow supersedes the zoning, and that is not going to be the case. We're still going to be needing a special use permit through this body. So, unless I'm
Use permit is issued to allow the Henson construction waste disposal facility. So that is the first part of the staff report. We will also have a presentation from the petitioner, but I think now we'd like to address the communications received about this case. You want to take it, Libby?
And we've really only just had a little bit of time to review the communication, but I wanted to offer some observations. We have also here with us tonight Scott Tess, who's the manager of our environmental division in Public Works, and Brad Bennett, who's one of our civil engineers, and who's going to remove the remaining materials that might be on the site. And we have city ordinances that would address that. We have nuisance ordinances, so if somebody does abandon a site and leave materials, we have a way to correct that. We have a process to order the removal, and we can even remove those ourselves and bill a property owner and lien the property as well. The only cases where we actually require a use to bond for removal of a facility would be something that's so expensive to remove, like a wind turbine or a cell tower. So that is something. We do have some other mechanisms in place. In terms of this conditional use, from the nearby facility about the Henson facility. So that's something that, as we move forward into this more substantial review process, we'll learn much more about. There's another item in the letter that says that siting process somehow supersedes the zoning, and that is not going to be the case. We're still going to be needing a special use permit through this body. So, unless I'm shown something different in the state law that can be superseded, I think that's important that we handle the zoning and also work on the siting. So when we have a submittal from Henson, we'll know more about that, and we'll obviously do the process correctly necessary for that. And petitioners here, and I'm sure they can answer questions about the impacts and what the EPA permits will involve that will control the pollutants and the dust and the process they need to go through for that. In terms of the decision on the conditional use permit, that's a zoning administration decision. What's a prudent way to proceed? And if somebody has a problem with that determination, the zoning board hears those appeals. So that's something, although we're happy to to hear from the Plan Commission, but that is my recommendation, prudent recommendation, that you do the conditional use so we know that we will be correct that. We have a process to order the removal, and we can even remove those ourselves and bill a property owner and lien the property as well. The only cases where we actually require a use to bond for removal of a facility would be something that's so expensive to remove, like a wind turbine or a cell tower. So that is something we do have some other mechanisms in place. In terms of this conditional use permit, that was really zoning administrator's determination that it would be prudent to also grant a conditional use permit, because obviously the southern lot is only going to be partially used. So it's for the protection of the petitioner.
Is there any fundamental legal reason or something?
No, you can delete that criterion, yes.
Okay. I think there's an inherent contradiction, which we can deal with later, but I just wanted to ask that.
Mr. Otto.
The applicant is not the owner of the land. Does the permit go to the applicant, who will be a tenant, or does the permit go to the owner of the land? So if Southwind has a change of business plan, and I mean, it's not uncommon for us to approve something that never actually gets built. If they disappear.
In terms of the decision on the conditional use permit, that's a zoning administration decision. What's a prudent way to proceed? And if somebody has a problem with that determination, the zoning board hears those appeals. So that's something, although we're happy to hear from the Plan Commission, but that is my recommendation, prudent recommendation, that you do the conditional use so we know there will be potentially two uses. But we're not approving, unlike what this says, we are not approving the Henson facility. We're not signaling approval of the Henson facility. Okay? That's still to come. I think those are like this. It runs with the operation. If you want to match it, you
That
probably
clarifies
have,
it
yeah.
for me, yeah.
Further questions? No. Oh, Ms. Upavant.
Is this standard to go ahead and proceed at this point before the EPA approval is granted? What's the standard order?
Yes, that's been our standard procedure with the previous recycling centers.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? If not, let me just quickly outline the procedures for public hearing. The petitioner will outline the request and give us evidence, and we'll have a chance to ask questions of the petitioner. Other proponents and supporters of the petition may speak to us. The
Inherent
opponents.
contradiction, which we can deal with later, but I just wanted to ask that.
Mr. Otto.
The applicant is not the owner of the land. Does the permit go to the applicant, who will be a tenant, or does the permit go to the owner of the land? So if Southwind has a change of business plan, and I mean, it's not uncommon for us to approve something that never actually gets built. If they disappear and then someone wants to do something else, they would have to go back through the process?
Unless they match the same use and site plan, they would have to go back through the process, yes.
So the permit does go to the land. The land will be permitted to have recycling.
All right.
My name is Rich Gerard, and I'm here on behalf of the petitioner Southwind Raz. And Chairman, Board, thank you for your time to present. Also here is, in case there was any question or issue, Tom Henson, who's the owner of the site, is present, and he'll be here to answer any questions if you have it. Also, Tom Jordan from Foth Engineering, who worked on the engineering part of the site plan for the engineer. He is also present and will be happy to answer questions. And Mr. Engstrom and Ms. Tyler have covered a lot of the material and information already, so I won't waste a lot of your time by really going over that more. What I'll try to do is talk more about what Southwind Raz is.
Standard to go ahead and proceed at this point before the EPA approval is granted? What's the standard order?
Yes, that's been our standard procedure with the previous recycling centers.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? If not, let me just quickly outline the procedures for a public hearing. The petitioner will outline the request and give us evidence, and we'll have a chance to ask questions of the petitioner. Other proponents and supporters of the petition may speak to us. Then opponents may speak to us, and they can ask questions of the petitioner through me. You can direct your questions to me, and I'll relay them. Other people may speak on the matter. Staff may make additional comments. Petitioner may then rebut and summarize their testimony, at which point it will close the public hearing and we'll discuss the
Solid waste landfill transfer station to the fairly extensive recycling operation of concrete and asphalt. And what we're asking for, which has been said, is a special use for to operate a recycled asphalt shingles, and the acronym is commonly called RAS for recycled asphalt shingles in this district, and it's certainly compatible with the use. One of the questions that came up is, do we do the zoning first or the permitting first? And we, as part of this process, will be applying for 2 IEPA permits. And one of the conditions of the IEPA permit in your application is that the current zoning exists for that application. So you have to have the zoning before you can file the application for it. It's kind of what comes first. Question or issue. Tom Henson, who's the owner of the site, is present, and he'll be here to answer any questions if you have it. Also, Tom Jordan from Foth Engineering, who worked on the engineering part of the site plan for the engineer. He is also present and will be happy to answer questions. And Mr. Engstrom and Ms. Tyler have covered a lot of the material information already, so I won't waste a lot of your time by really going over that more. What I'll try to do is talk more about what Southwind RAS is, what RAS the process is itself, and then we're all here to answer any questions that you might have. Is the best way to advance it just using this?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to skip through. I did a little PowerPoint, but we're going to skip through some of the slides as we go because you've already seen and heard load. And then that load is brought onto the site and tipped. It's inspected again. And remember, what we're talking about is a load of shingles from homes. It's then loaded in the upper right-hand corner. You see a hopper. And when it goes in that hopper, then it goes through a sort line. And in that sort line, you'll see the dumpster, or the dumpster's basically underneath. Well, metal, it goes through a magnet, takes out all the metal. The wood gets dropped down into wood, the metal gets dropped down in the metal, and then the asphalt shingles continue on through the process. And what's happening here, all those things then get sent to recyclers and get recycled. So at the end of the day, 99% of all the material that comes on the site gets recycled. And 100% of the material goes off the site again. Asphalt shingles, and the acronym is commonly called RAS for recycled asphalt shingles in this district, and it's certainly compatible with the use. One of the questions that came up is, do we do the zoning first or the permitting first? And we, as part of this process, will be applying for 2 IEPA permits. And one of the conditions of the IEPA permit in your application is that the current zoning exists for that application. So you have to have the zoning before you can file the application for it. It's kind of what comes first with the property. We talked about the site engineering. I have a little different plan here that's going to show how this process actually happens, what it is, and these steps in going through the engineering. The asphalt cycling itself, it's tear off shingles from basically the roof. Material's an additive. It's taken now off of there. It's off the site, and it's taken to an asphalt plant and uses an additive in asphalt. And it actually produces a higher quality asphalt at a lower cost than the other types of materials based on the quality of the materials that go in. So the real summary or the real strength of doing this is the kind of the win-win situation. It starts out with the fact that the roofer who's tearing it off, it costs him less to bring it to this site and have it recycled than it does to take it to a landfill and pay the fee that it takes to put it into a landfill. It's a benefit to the environment because not only are you filling up, the asphalt shingles are the 3rd largest construction waste product. They're going to go into through a sort line. And in that sort line, you'll see the dumpster, or the dumpster's basically underneath. Well, metal, it goes through a magnet, takes out all the metal. the wood gets dropped down into wood, the metal gets dropped down into metal, and then the asphalt shingles continue on through the process. And what's happening here, all those things then get sent to recyclers and get recycled. So at the end of the day, 99% of all the material that comes on the site gets recycled. And 100% of the material goes off the site again, gets removed. None of it is on the site. When it comes into the conveyor, it goes into this chopper. It chops it up into a granular type of consistency. And then it goes through a trammel which sorts it to make it a consistent type of material. If the material is too large, then it doesn't have to be subsidized by anything, and yet it's a great value. Now, in Southwind RAS itself, as question as an operator, they're currently operating 12 sites in Illinois, and they've never had a violation by the EPA on the 12 sites that they're doing. And we've never had a site turned down by a municipality when we applied for the site there. The permits that we're required to get, the 2 IPA permits, there's 2 sections of the IPA code, 2254 and 2238. And those are the 2 permits that Mr. Engstrom was mentioning before. The 2254 actually, his nickname is called a BUD, which is a beneficial use determination permit. And under that permit, on the quality of the materials that go in. So the real summary or the real strength of doing this is the kind of the win-win situation. It starts out with the fact that the roofer who's tearing it off, it costs him less to bring it to this site and have it recycled than it does to take it to a landfill and pay the fee that it takes to put it into a landfill. It's a benefit to the environment because not only are you filling up, the asphalt shingles are the 3rd largest construction waste product that go into landfills, so they fill up landfills. If you recycle it, you're saving the landfill for future use. On top of it, the worst part about it is what you're putting in the landfill is a valuable petroleum product that's limited and important in use. So by recycling it, you're saving this petroleum and you're putting it back in there. So in the process itself, there's no heat, there's no chemicals. It doesn't stay on site for a long-term basis. It's used product. 100% of it goes back off site into the product itself. So I said there's no real environmental issues to the product either. And when you see the equipment that you'll see up there, it's not an intense use, but this equipment, except for the scales, is really all portable. And it can all be taken from site to site as it's needed in there. And the noise level, it basically is like a truck, a large truck and operating. So it doesn't have a large noise. The only dust in the process is in the chopper in the bottom left when it's chopping, and then internally it has spray bars, and it's all handled internally to prevent by the EPA on the 12 sites that they're doing. And we've never had a site turned down by a municipality when we applied for the site there. The permits that we're required to get, the 2 IPA permits, there's 2 sections of the IPA code, 2254 and 2238. And those are the 2 permits that Mr. Engstrom was mentioning before. The 2254 actually, his nickname is called a BUD, which is a beneficial use determination permit. And under that permit, when we send the application, the IPA actually makes a determination that this is not a waste product, that it is a beneficial use product that's being recycled and putting back into the economy, and it has a different process. So you get that, we get a BUD permit to be able to handle the recycling by Mr. Engstrom as part of the petition. And I think I've tried to give you a very quick summary of what it is. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have. As I said, a lot of it was already covered by the staff. So thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Hopkins?
Henson owns both parcels?
Yes, there's 2 parcels there in Henson. And the reason of the special use, the conditional use, is we're going over onto a part of a second parcel, and then we also are sharing an access through the property. But yes, Henson owns both parcels. We'll be leasing to the product either. And when you see the equipment that you'll see up there, it's not an intense use, but this equipment, except for the scales, is really all portable. And it can all be taken from site to site as it's needed in there. And the noise level, it basically is like a truck, a large truck and operating. So it doesn't have a large noise. The only dust in the process is in the chopper in the bottom left when it's chopping, and then internally it has spray bars, and it's all handled internally to prevent dust from happening. And as Mr. Ingstrom, when he showed the site plan, the entire site is being paved, including from the entryway in, to avoid any type of issues with mud or with contamination of mixing the products and so forth. And the maximum pile size is 7,500 tons, and that's approximately. And there's pads on the thing. I'm trying to think. It's about. It could reach as high as 30 feet, and about 60 feet by 60 feet. I think it's not usually that big. What happens? The reason there could sometimes be a larger pile, when they sell a product to the Tollway and IDOT, both put these in their mixes. And to some extent, because it is a green technology and they want to do recycling, it's actually additional points and requirements to try to use that material. If you take a contract for them, they don't allow you to do that unless you have the full amount of material already covered by the staff. So thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Hopkins?
Henson owns both parcels?
Yes, there's two parcels there in Henson, and the reason of the special use, the conditional use, is we're going over onto a part of a second parcel, and then we also are sharing an access through the property. But yes, Henson owns both parcels. We'll be leasing.
Mr. Otto?
I was very interested in this whole process. I mean, recycling catches my attention, and I loathe asphalt shingles and landfilling them, so IEPA permit?
Yes.
They monitor that. And then another question I have, this is a combustible product, and recently in the past year, we've had a huge collection of tires up at Hoopston and you hear about these periodically. What sort of safeguards can be taken? Is that simply a risk that a vandal or someone might come by there and think it's funny to
Yeah,
you understand my question?
I do understand your question, because I've had it asked of me before. This is my 9th hearing of these, of this special use. And the real answer to that, it really isn't a combustible product. I mean, anything is combustible if the temperature is high enough. And about 60 feet by 60 feet, I think. It's not usually that big. What happens, the reason there could sometimes be a larger pile, when they sell a product to the Tollway and IDOT, both put these in their mixes. And to some extent, because it is a green technology and they want to do recycling, it's actually additional points and requirements to try to use that material. If you take a contract for them, they don't allow you to do that unless you have the full amount of material on your site available and ready to go before they start the project, because they don't want to take any chance that you will run out or you won't have it when they get somewhere. So because of that, occasionally they'll have to build a bigger pile because that's the requirement of the Tollway Authority. But generally
I mean, it's an industrial site. We don't have homes, I think I saw, within 1,200 feet. So, I mean, but it was a question that came to mind because although it's difficult, one can imagine certain circumstances. I mean, the big piles of tires don't routinely burn, but when they do, it's a huge, huge problem.
And when you think the other products that are out there, the oil storage, facility and other places, this just isn't likely. It's the first place, it doesn't burn very well, and even if it did, it doesn't sustain a burn. But like I said, the best probably answer is that's why you've zoned that whole area in heavy industrial, so that a use can be put there that doesn't have a risk to things around it.
Further questions? Ms.
Hear about these periodically. What sort of safeguards can be taken? Is that simply a risk that a vandal or someone might come by there and think it's funny to
Yeah,
you understand my question?
I do understand your question, because I've had it asked of me before. This is my 9th hearing of these, of this special use. And the real answer to that, it really isn't a combustible product. I mean, anything is combustible if the temperature is high enough. But once again, get back to what this is made of. It's made of exactly the same materials as the roof on your house, the driveway, and the city street and parking lots. But they don't catch fire. You know, it would take to burn asphalt would take a tremendous fire, because heat's what actually they use to make it. So it does a couple of days, you know, unless it's a very large amount, which is not what's anticipated here, at least not initially. So literally in a couple of days, they can process what needs to be processed.
Thank you.
Anything further? I do have one question. If you could, looking at your diagram there, and there is a site plan on page 11, so here it shows your pads, and then I guess the machines that do the work, and I believe at the top left-hand corner is Allied Waste, and then Emulsicoat would be off the page to the west. The
tires don't routinely burn, but when they do, it's a huge, huge problem.
And when you think the other products that are out there, the oil storage, you know, facility and other places, this just isn't likely. It's the first place, it doesn't burn very well, and even if it did, you know, it doesn't sustain a burn. But like I said, the best probably answer is that's why you've zoned that whole area in heavy industrial, so that a use can be put there that doesn't have a risk to things around it.
Further questions? Ms. Bynum?
So exactly how long can the piles sit there at the facility before they're moved off-site?
And, there's different requirements on the time, but I believe most of it is the material is 60 days when it needs to then be recycled and removed. Any piles on that site of aggregates that's larger than the piles here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, literally 20.
Well, I went out there, but it was dark, and we couldn't see very far. But yeah, I appreciate it. Any further questions? Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you very much.
Anyone else want to speak in support of this petition? Anyone wish to speak in opposition to this petition? Please. You could just sign the sheet and state your name. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Anything further? I do have one question. Could, looking at your diagram there, and there is a site plan on page 11, so here it shows your pads, and then I guess the machines that do the work, and I believe at the top left-hand corner is Allied Waste, and then Emulsicoat would be off the page to the west. So the truck comes in up here, and then you've got your pre-processed ungrounded. I mean, does the process go from south to north, or does it start from the north and end in the south?
It starts at the south. The main entryway is at the south, and then there you'll see that's the scale.
My council, just to go over the remaining bullet points that were sent in before a decision is made. And again, I don't want anybody to think we're against or for what's going on over there, but as a business owner in Urbana that's already here, that has a large investment, and this is going directly across the street, that's all we would ask, is to answer those few bullet points to our council who reviewed the permitting and application, and it could probably be resolved pretty quickly.
Yeah, so essentially you're saying that you'd just like to bring your concerns to the city and work through them in a manner that allows the thing to continue.
Yeah, just basically, you know, talk with my council, answer the questions. They might have the answers easily, so it will resolve her concerns, and then we can move forward. And they can.
Any further questions? Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you very much.
Anyone else want to speak in support of this petition? Anyone wish to speak in opposition to this petition? Please. You could just sign the sheet and state your name. Thank
Okay.
you.
Actually, I don't want to oppose the information, what they want to plan on doing out the facility. I just wanted to, this year, or
Okay.
going into 2014.
Any questions for Mr. Grant? Mr. Hopkins?
I just want to make sure I understand what's just taken place.
Yeah.
What I heard of as a request is that this occur before we act.
Yeah.
And I would like to make clear that we have not agreed to that by the handing around of comments here. Or if that's what's just happened,
is that
then I
clear?
think it needs to be made explicit and be in action.
Are you asking for us to wait until you've had a conversation? Is that?
All I'm asking is if you're going to decide on the special use permit, to wait and vote in favor of it after we get going directly across the street. That's all we would ask, is to answer those few bullet points to our council who reviewed the permitting and application, and it could probably be resolved pretty quickly.
Yeah, so essentially you're saying that you'd just like to bring your concerns to the city and work through them in a manner that allows the thing to continue.
Yeah, just basically, talk with my council, answer the questions. They might have the answers easily, so it will resolve her concerns, and then we can move forward and they can do whatever they need to do there.
Well, that's good to know. Had you attempted to contact city staff prior to writing the letter, or at any point in the process?
We just found out about this really briefly. It wasn't, we didn't know about this for a long time. I think I might have received a notice like a week or
Recent landowners, those are due 10 days before the public hearing. In this case, we sent it to, our procedure is to send notification to the, where the property tax bill goes. So in this case, it actually ended up going to Phoenix, and we didn't catch that. And calling Mr. Grant to follow up, it turns out they actually don't have a mailing address here in Urbana. So we had to notify them by telephone.
And when was the actual application available for anybody to inquire and review it?
Yeah, that would be with the, when the packet was posted. So that was the Friday before the original.
And I would like to make clear that we have not agreed to that by the handing around of comments here. Or if that's what's just happened,
is that
then I
clear?
think it needs to be made explicit and be in action.
Are you asking for us to wait until you've had a conversation? Is that?
All I'm asking is if you're going to decide on the special use permit, to wait and vote in favor of it after we get some more questions answered.
Oh, that's clear.
And
If I may, we can address their concerns, if Plan Commission does act tonight, we can address their concerns before City Council takes final action.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any any audience wish to speak on this case? Okay. I believe we know who you are, but if you would state your name and sign the sheet, that would be great.
Carol McCusick, 1907 North Cunningham Avenue. For the,
So in this case, it actually ended up going to Phoenix, and we didn't catch that. And calling Mr. Grant to follow up, it turns out they actually don't have a mailing address here in Urbana. So we had to notify them by telephone.
And when was the actual application available for anybody to inquire and review it?
Yeah, that would be with the, when the packet was posted. So that was the Friday before the original date, so November 11th?
So the
No.
information has been available to the
It's
public?
the first
It's
week in
been
November.
Available for at least 3 weeks, if not 4 weeks?
Yes.
In what way, though? How would anybody know?
saying that if this is passed, the operation can begin you know, before Henson, the Henson is approved. And I don't see how you could have the operation working if their entrance and their scale is, depends on that, on that property. It seems like if it's construction stuff coming in, you know, it'll be like loads that would be, sometimes have some mixture in them. That would be apt to be happening, seems like to me. So could
I believe we know who you are, but if you would state your name and sign the sheet, that would be great.
Carol McCusick, 1907 North Cunningham Avenue. For the, these staff memoranda are sort of the record of the information you have for your decision later. And they don't really show what the is the planning department, the zoning, I guess. Would they, I know you've got this other stuff in Public Works, but would they be allowed to start the work though? Because
My impression of that, as city staff can speak to this, is yes. That's the reason for the well, they would have to go through the permitting process through the EPA and all of that. But assuming that they got through all of that, the answer is yes. That's why the conditional use allows them to go ahead and start, and then Henson can come in later and we can consider that separately. But the asphalt shingle process.
How you could have the operation working if their entrance and their scale is depends on that property. It seems like if it's construction stuff coming in, you know, it'll be like loads that would be sometimes have some mixture in them. That would be apt to be happening. Seems like me. So could I guess that's the question is, if the city council, let's say the permit, the site, the special use permit for Southwind was
Are there any questions at this
Well,
time?
I'm just a little confused.
Stagg?
Are you saying, are you saying now that if we say that it's fine to do right now, that then they can go ahead right now?
Well, the
with
council will have to act, and then they will have to get their Illinois EPA approval.
They would have to go to the city council?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, they would have to continue through the process, but assuming that they got through all of that.
Yeah.
They don't have to wait for the Henson part.
start the work though, because
My impression of that, as city staff can speak to this, is yes. That's the reason for the well, they would have to go through the permitting process through the EPA and all of that. But assuming that they got through all of that, the answer is yes. That's why the conditional use allows them to go ahead and start, and then Henson can come in later and we can consider that separately. But the asphalt shingle processing, they would be able to start putting their facility in once all the approvals are in place. And I assume that would mean, I did want to ask about, are you extending Saline Court at this time? You didn't say anything, but we can talk about that later. But I assume that there would have to be some kind of
expansion here of territory that's, and I just, you know, busting, separating out stuff is dirty. So
I think you raise a good point that adjacent land uses can also, can always impact the land next to it. The owner of the property is here, and I assume is not in opposition. Maybe after you're finished, we could just confirm that there's any concerns there. I assume that there aren't any, or we'd have heard about them. But when that other application comes to us, we will have a chance to consider it in full in light of assuming that the
Confused.
mistake.
Are you saying, are you saying now that if we say that it's fine to do right now, that then they can go ahead right now?
Well, the
with
council will have to act, and then they will have to get their Illinois EPA approval.
They would have to go to the city council?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, they would have to continue through the process, but assuming that they got through all of that.
Yeah.
They don't have to wait for the Henson part. That's the purpose of doing the conditional use now. Ms. McCusick, anything else?
Well, I think that the site that's slated or might be, you might decide to allow to be a
We are asking for the Planning Commission to make a decision tonight and a vote tonight for a couple of reasons. But to get to the letter from Allied's counsel, and this was already pointed out by Ms. Tyler, but it really addresses the future Henson construction. It really doesn't say anything or have anything to do about the RAS facility that we're asking for the recycling asphalt shingles. It's a standalone facility, and we are building it and putting everything in. And if the other project from construction never gets approved by the city, it makes no difference to this project and to what we're asking for tonight. We're asking for the ability to do a recycling of asphalt shingles here. And as I said, it's standalone. The engineering is.
I think you raise a good point that adjacent land uses can also, can always impact the land next to it. The owner of the property is here, and I assume is not in opposition. Maybe after you're finished, we could just confirm that there's any concerns there. I assume that there aren't any, or we'd have heard about them. But when that other application comes to us, we will have a chance to consider it in full in light of assuming that the asphalt shingle recycling is in operation. We will be able to consider that as we consider the special use for the front or the south part of the property, as will the city council.
Well, I didn't follow that, but thanks for that.
Being very quickly and getting our permits in and then getting the site there in order to be able to get contracts for the whole next year. If we delay this too much, we can lose a whole year of business at that site, which will dramatically impact us. And as I said, we think it's pretty clear, obviously I'm a little biased, but that it's a valuable use, it's a public use, it's a very minimal, it's all portable equipment except for this, compared to the uses around it, including Allied, we're a very small use there. So we respectfully request that you do take action, that any response that the staff and them do, as was suggested, be done between now and the city council time period, because I think we've submitted all the addresses the future Henson construction. It really doesn't say anything or have anything to do about the RAS facility that we're asking for the recycling asphalt shingles. It's a standalone facility, and we are building it and putting everything in. And if the other project from construction never gets approved by the city, it makes no difference to this project and to what we're asking for tonight. We're asking for the ability to do a recycling of asphalt shingles here. And as I said, it's standalone. The engineering's been provided and done. It has nothing to do with this other petition. So we don't feel there's any reason or need to wait for a response, because the response they're really asking for has to do with the construction recycling that has nothing to do with us. So
recycling, and we're also the property owner of both the parcels there on Saline Court. And just to kind of clarify where we're at, our process for our permitting will probably take 2 years. So when we hope to start submitting it in 3 or 4 months, our process will take 2 years. And the biggest concern I think that our neighbors have is we are going to be going after the same waste stream. It's a competitive concern, and their council has the same concern for our facility in Bloomington. So, you know, I would too like to see this move forward tonight. It's important. We could make an effect on the recycling up here, and
as I said, we think it's pretty clear, you know, obviously I'm a little biased, but that it's a valuable use, it's a public use, it's a very minimal, it's all portable equipment except for this, like, compared to the uses around it, including Allied, we're a very small use there. So we respectfully request that you do take action, that any response that the staff and them do, as was suggested, be done between now and the city council time period, because I think we've submitted all the information that is needed to make a decision. So thank you very much. The one final thing I do is just to clarify it, since the owner of the property is here, Tom Henson, would you stand up and verify that you support and join the petition and agree to the application, Mr. Henson?
I had a question of how long do you think you would take to just answer all these questions before?
I think most of the questions, I believe, have already been asked and through the application. I'm not speaking on behalf of Southwind RAS. I'm just here as a spectator. So.
Oh. But I was just thinking that
the questions
to
that I
answer
saw.
the questions might not be so long,
Speaking
and
for
that
Southwind
sounds
RAS,
like.
I can answer them right now. The questions they asked about the RAS were almost nothing. They said, do we submit information? Well, the engineering, you know, not only do we submit information, it's been engineered and gone through the engineering department here. They just didn't come and get that information.
Take years. So when we hope to start submitting it in 3 or 4 months, our process will take 2 years. And the biggest concern I think that our neighbors have is we are going to be going after the same waste stream. It's a competitive concern, and their council has the same concern for our facility in Bloomington. So, you know, I would too like to see this move forward tonight. It's important. We could make an effect on the recycling up here, and for our facility too in Bloomington Normal. We're the only permitted construction and demolition recycle center downstate Illinois, and we've had 0 violations. We keep approximately 100 tons of material out of the landfill every single day, and.
But obviously, you can read it yourself, and staff can make your own, draw your own conclusions.
I advise you to sit down again, I think. No, we're up here. No, I'm sorry. Ms. Upaban.
I may not have understood what you just said, but I thought you said you were going after the same recycling stream or the same waste
It's the
stream?
construction. The other firm is a construction waste, which is the same business that Allied Waste is in.
Oh, I see.
Essentially, you're going to have two competitors
I
right next to
understand.
each other.
I'm trying to avoid the confusion.
Yeah.
To some extent, I asked Tom not to talk.
Right.
Because we are not taking the same stream.
Right.
With what we're doing is a very limited process. And, yeah.
I'm
I
not
mean-
speaking on behalf of Southwind RAS. I'm just here as a spectator. So,
Oh,
um,
but I was just thinking that
the questions
to
that I saw.
answer the questions might not be so long.
Speaking for
And that
Southwind
sounds
RAS,
like.
I can answer them right now. The questions they asked about the RAS were almost nothing. They said, do we submit information? Well, the engineering, you know, not only do we submit information, it's been engineered and gone through the engineering department here. They just didn't come and get that information. Not that they would normally, but all information's been submitted to the city. There isn't anything else that Southwind could tell them about anything. You know, the permits are issued by the IEPA.
So you're saying that you don't have any
You better come
questions?
back.
There isn't
You don't have any
else
answers?
of ownership whatsoever, and that they're two separate businesses and entities. You know, the only relationship that would exist is that in his recycling operation, depending on what happened, he might, for instance, asphalt shingles might be part of what he ends up recycling, and he could take those to this facility, would then get processed and recycled. He'd take wood to another place, he'd take metal to another place, but that would be the only kind of relationship. There is no ownership relationship.
Okay, and their 2-year process, which I think you stated, has nothing to do with whether or not with the business that you're going to have on the land.
That's correct. The permitting is completely different, and the requirements are different, and it has nothing.
Not have understood what you just said, but I thought you said you were going after the same recycling stream or the same
It's
waste
the
stream?
construction, the other firm is the construction waste, which is the same business that Allied Waste is in.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, essentially, you're going to have two
I-
competitors
I
right next to each
understand.
other.
I'm trying to avoid the confusion.
Yeah.
To some extent, I asked Tom not to talk.
Right.
Because we are not taking the same stream.
Right.
What we're doing is a very limited process, and, yeah.
Mr. Hopkins.
For Mr. Kirk, as the owners of the south parcel,
Yes,
you are leasing to Southwind
that's correct.
an
And if you're so
okay.
inclined.
I move that we send plan case number 2216 SU 13 to City Council with a recommendation for approval as recommended by staff with the deletion of .4.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hopkins, seconded by Mr. Otto. Discussion of the motion.
So I might
Yeah,
explain why
That would be.
we delete
Yes.
.4.
Sure.
And I think I understand this case.
Asphalt shingles might be part of what he ends up recycling, and he could take those to this facility, would then get processed and recycled. He'd take wood to another place, he'd take metal to another place, but that would be the only kind of relationship. There is no ownership relationship.
Okay, and their 2-year process, which I think you stated, has nothing to do with whether or not, with the business that you're going to have on the land.
That's correct. The permitting is completely different, and the requirements are different, and it has nothing to do with each other.
Okay, I was just confused by that, because I thought it was like, if he doesn't get approved, then you guys can't do business on the land, but that's not correct.
No, we'll be doing business 2 years, probably maybe before he's doing business there.
Okay,
Which requires is a conditional use, all right? Now, the reason we have to delete .4 is the conditional use goes with the parcel, all right? And if the south wind is going to go into action in fewer than 2 years, then their right to do what they're going to do can't be conditional on the approval 2 years later of a particular use for the other half of that parcel. It has to be contingent only on any other compatible within zoning uses that could go on that parcel. As recommended by staff with the deletion of .4.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hopkins, seconded by Mr. Otto. Discussion of the motion.
So I might
Yeah,
explain why
That would be.
we delete
Yes.
.4.
Sure.
And I think I understand this case. We are doing two things, a special use permit and a conditional use permit. The special use permit is for the particular use by a lessee.
Just conferring with Jeff Engstrom, and we feel that we have other ways to control the sequencing. So, you know, if there's a logical problem with that condition, we wouldn't have an objection with the removal.
Ms. Uban.
And just so I understand this, wouldn't it almost be that, I'm sorry, wouldn't it almost make sense that the Henson project would need the conditional use, not the first project?
This was part of our discussion, and it was prudent,
Okay,
we felt, to do with the first.
okay.
We did have that discussion, and, you know, but I do think there's some downsides to the condition. However, we'll have other ways to control the sequence.
Southwind is going to go into action in fewer than 2 years, then their right to do what they're going to do can't be conditional on the approval 2 years later of a particular use for the other half of that parcel. It has to be contingent only on any other compatible within zoning uses that could go on that parcel. And because the lease is for an area of land for a period of time, right, that should work. I see no legal problems with that. So that the conditional use permit is only.
When I initially looked at the documents on this, I thought this, in my mind, would be more complicated than it is at this point. I've been up in that area many times to take stuff to the Allied Waste Facility and to pick up aggregate. And the scope of the piles and relative to other things in that, this is an easy call for me, with the knowledge that the Illinois EPA is going to be doing its job and trusting that they do their job well. We really don't have control over that, but I think in terms of our due diligence, I think we should move forward tonight. This has properly been posted. The letter we have from the attorney, I think they've been.
Mrs. LeBan.
And just so I understand this, wouldn't it almost be that, wouldn't it almost make sense that the Henson project would need the conditional use, not the first project?
This was part of our discussion, and it was prudent,
Okay.
we felt, to do with the first.
Okay.
We did have that discussion, and, but I do think there's some downsides to the condition. However, we'll have other ways to control the sequencing.
Okay.
Ms. Hopkins?
The point is that the property owner leasing the property has a willing lessee, but also wants to use the other.
I mean, there's a gigantic swale for retention on the asphalt part. Are we thinking ahead enough that we're okay with Henson paving the rest of it and retaining enough water?
Hi, I'm Brad Bennett. I'm a senior civil engineer. I've reviewed some of the site plan information submitted on it. As far as the stormwater management goes, they did submit a stormwater management plan, and actually the detention was provided as part of the greater site development. There's a detention pond to the south that all the runoff from the site will go to. In our stormwater management ordinance, we really don't have any water quality requirements.
And to pick up aggregate. And the scope of the piles and relative to other things in that, this is an easy call for me, with the knowledge that the Illinois EPA is going to be doing its job and trusting that they do their job well. We really don't have control over that, but I think in terms of our due diligence, I think we should move forward tonight. This has properly been posted. The letter we have from the attorney, I think they've been addressed, and there's nothing really in there that causes me to think that we should delay this any further, since we already missed a meeting earlier due to lack of quorum. So I favor going ahead and getting this done tonight.
Anything? Mr.
It's the size of sand is the same as runoff from a asphalt street. Particulates in the storm sewer system are negligible.
Well, as far as
if they are, they are. I just don't know.
They'll have to keep the material from washing into the stormwater sewer system. But I mean, as far as the water that comes off of it, it shouldn't be any different.
Okay, and you said this stormwater runs to a retention pond at the south of the site? I mean, it looks to me like they have an inlet halfway down the site that runs to a manhole that runs into our storm sewer system.
Well, that storm sewer system ultimately discharges into the pond.
Okay. So we're not in danger of overwhelming the system on the north end with it?
Hi, I'm Brad Bennett. I'm a senior civil engineer. I've reviewed some of the site plan information submitted on it. As far as the stormwater management goes, they did submit a stormwater management plan, and Actually, the detention was provided as part of the greater site development. There's a detention pond to the south that all the runoff from the site will go to. You know, in our stormwater management ordinance, we really don't have any water quality requirements as, you know, far as having to treat the stormwater. I would treat the stormwater or classify the stormwater coming off the site as no different than from any other paved surface that we have in Urbana, you know, like the Walmart parking lot or large. I mean, as the gentleman that
Find that they're essentially.
The engineer was just actually explaining that to me.
Yeah, if you
So could you
come up and explain
I think
it
we
to
would.
us, yeah.
I know the Illinois EPA. It's their job to protect against that, but I think it would give us a level of comfort if you explain that to us, because we don't want to have black water flowing into our system and down the saline. And
No, we don't.
No. Thank you, sir. If you could state your name.
My name is Tom Jordan. I'm with Both Infrastructure and Environment. We designed the site such that sheet flows off to the swale on the east side of the site. And then in the swale, we have an aggregate ditch check to filter out particulates that might find their way down towards the storm sewer system.
they'll have to keep the material from washing into the stormwater sewer system, but I mean, as far as the water that comes off of it, it shouldn't be any different.
Okay, and you said this stormwater runs to a retention pond at the south of the site? I mean, it
Well-
looks to me like they have an inlet halfway down the site that runs to a manhole that runs into our storm sewer system.
Well, that storm sewer system ultimately discharges into the pond.
Okay. So we're not in danger of overwhelming the system on the north end with this? Okay.
No, and in fact, the detention pond was actually sized and designed to capture the flow from this area when it was built out.
Further questions? Thank you. Okay, any more commentary?
For the city engineers, and if it's okay, it's okay. Again,
I mean, any material that isn't captured by the ditch check would ultimately settle out in the pond. It wouldn't end up reaching the creek anyways. Would you agree with that, Mr. Jordan?
Well, you raise a point about a 100-year event. It really is. It really is an event that has a 1% chance of happening in any given year. And our concern in stormwater runoff and stormwater quality is more addressed in the annual event or the more recurrent events that happen several times a year. And so that's pretty common in design to filter out any particulates for stormwater quality in the more frequent events and allowing for the infrequent event.
because we don't want to have black water flowing into our system and down the saline. And
No, we don't.
No. Thank you, sir. If you could state your name.
My name is Tom Jordan. I'm with Both Infrastructure and Environment. We designed the site such that sheet flows off to the swale on the east side of the site. And then in the swale, we have an aggregate ditch check to filter out particulates that might find their way down towards the storm sewer system. And it's intended not to be maintenance-free. It's intended to pick up any of those particulates that might get into the waste or to the stormwater runoff prior to them getting to the stormwater detention basin. So the quality we try to address, the volume.
And the city council will hear it
December 16th.
December 16th.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone, for your testimony. And the next case, Plan Case 2218, I think that's yes, PUD 13. This is a request for a planned unit development by Gary Olson on behalf of Verdant Prairies at 704 East Windsor Road.
I just saw him leave.
I think he went home, yeah.
I don't know, he maybe went to a room. There he is.
Oh, there. Okay. Mr. Ingstrom, when you're ready.
All right.
You raise a point about a 100-year event. It really is. It really is an event that has a 1% chance of happening in any given year. And our concern in stormwater runoff and stormwater quality is more addressed in the annual event or the more recurrent events that happen several times a year. And so that's pretty common in design to filter out any particulates for stormwater quality in more frequent events and allowing for the infrequent events in detention.
You all right?
Yeah.
All right, thanks, sir. Okay. One last check. I think we're ready for a roll call.
The property is a former Windsor Swim Club, and it totals 4 acres in area. The property was zoned for R3 single and two-family residential use during the previous approvals for the site. There was a previous planned unit development approved in 2011 and 2012. And the applicant has subsequently revised the site plan significantly, requiring the new approvals. So review is for planned unit developments is typically processed as separate.
I think that's the, yes, PUD 13. This is a request for a planned unit development by Gary Olson on behalf of Verdant Prairies at 704 East Windsor Road.
I just saw him leave.
I think he went home, yeah.
I don't know, he maybe went to a room. There he is.
Oh, there. Okay. Mr. Ingstrom, when you're ready.
All right. So this is a request for a planned unit development, preliminary and final approval. It's for a 4.01 acre parcel at 704 East Windsor Road. Let's see, some more features. The site will feature up to 130 parking spaces provided in private garages and parking lots and off-street parking. Also 42 spaces for bicycle parking. There will be a dry detention basin along the southeast corner of the site. The site will feature low wattage lighting and also LED lighting. Let's see, and it will be built in phases based on market demand. According to the zoning ordinance, a residential planned unit development, residential use during the previous approvals for this site. There was a previous planned unit development approved in 2012. And the applicant has subsequently revised the site plan significantly, requiring the new approvals. So review is for planned unit developments is typically processed as separate applications for preliminary and final applications. But in this case, it's a refreshing of a previously approved planned unit development. So staff is comfortable with bringing both the preliminary and final together this time. Same concept with the circle drive. A different mix of housing types. It's a similar mix, but the new site would have more townhouse common lot line units than the previous site. The reason the applicant is requesting the revisions is due to difficulties securing funding for construction of condominiums. There's been a fundamental shift in the market for financing for condominiums since the 2008 housing crisis. So we had the applicant's 42 spaces for bicycle parking. There will be a dry detention basin along the southeast corner of the site. The site will feature low wattage lighting and also LED lighting. Let's see, and it will be built in phases based on market demand. According to the zoning ordinance, a residential planned unit development is allowed in the R3 district if it meets the criteria, which we'll go through tonight. Previous approvals, I mentioned, the previous site plan had 48 condominium unit developments, or condominium units. To the south, there is some land which was used for agriculture related uses by the university previously. And to the south, that is actually in Champaign County. It's unincorporated. The site itself used to house Windsor Swim Club, which shut down in 2009, I believe. Looking at the zoning map, the site is zoned R3, single and two-family residential. Pretty much the entire surrounding area is zoned R3, except directly north, there are 5 lots that are zoned R2, single-family. And to the south is zoned Champaign County. Site would have more townhouse common lot line units than the previous site. The reason the applicant is requesting the revisions is due to difficulties securing funding for construction of condominiums. There's been a fundamental shift in the market for financing for condominiums since the 2008 housing crisis. So we had the applicants had to revise the plan to have townhouse units instead. And additionally, it'll have 15 apartment units. So the revisions would allow for the project to move forward with construction. Overall goals and objectives which are relevant to the proposal. I'll go through a couple of these. Goal 2, new development in established neighborhoods should be compatible with the overall urban design fabric of the neighborhood. New development should be consistent with Urbana's unique character, promote a balanced and compatible mix of land uses, ensure land use patterns that conserve energy, increase Urbana's inventory of trees. The proposed site plan would have a number of new trees. Encouraged compact, contiguous, and sustainable growth patterns. This is unincorporated. The site itself used to house Windsor Swim Club, which shut down in 2009, I believe. Looking at the zoning map, the site is zoned R3, single and two-family residential. Pretty much the entire surrounding area is zoned R3, except directly north, there are 5 lots that are zoned R2, single-family. And to the south is zoned Champaign County agricultural zoning. Looking at the comprehensive plan, future land use map, the area is designated as residential suburban pattern, and directly to the south. And I should note Mr. Olson is here. He will have a presentation after staff presentation. Okay, so here is the site plan for the whole development. It consists of 15 townhouses in 5 plexes. So the northwest, the north, and the northeast corners. There will be, let's see, one 15-unit apartment building on the southwest corner with the overall urban design fabric of the neighborhood. New development should be consistent with Urbana's unique character, promote a balanced and compatible mix of land uses, ensure land use patterns that conserve energy, increase Urbana's inventory of trees. The proposed site plan would have a number of new trees. Encouraged compact, contiguous, and sustainable growth patterns. This is an infill site, so it matches that goal. Ensure new land uses are compatible with the existing community. Minimize incompatible land uses. Promote infill development. Promote a housing supply. The previous proposal had a private street, which was going to have permeable pavement, which is no longer possible with it being a public street. The site features green site design and building construction. The buildings will be modular construction, which is a greener technique, less construction waste, and more energy efficient units. I mentioned there's a storm detention basin along the south portion of the site, which will capture any excess storm water. Let's see. The engineer for the site has done. Okay, so here is the site plan for the whole development. It consists of 15 townhouses in 5 plexes. So the northwest, the north, and the northeast corners. There will be, let's see, one 15-unit apartment building on the southwest corner. And there will be 16 attached townhouses that'll be 2.5-story units towards the south half of the site. Flexibility in the subdivision development and design where necessary to provide public amenities not typically promoted by the zoning ordinance, to promote development that is significantly responsive to the goals, objectives, and future land uses in the comp plan. Another goal is to provide a higher level of street and pedestrian connectivity. We'll get to that in a minute. To coordinate architectural styles, building forms, building relationships within the development and surrounding neighborhood. To encourage the inclusion of a variety of public and private open spaces, recreational facilities, greenways, and trails, not typically promoted by the zoning ordinance. And the final goal is to conserve to the greatest extent possible unique natural and cultural features, environmentally sensitive areas, and historic resources. So as I mentioned, all of those goals, except for providing a higher level of public amenity and conserving natural resources and cultural features, are really featured in this development. The zoning ordinance has a couple of requirements for a planned unit development. It must be a contiguous tract of at least ½ acre. This is a 4-acre site, so it meets that requirement. And it needs to fall into one of the following 4 categories. And this development matches or relates to all 4 categories to some extent. Mixed use, either in the same building or with a campus layout, and providing a mixture of types of residential, commercial, or office and recreational uses. The proposed development does provide a mixture of housing types in a campus approach. The second criteria, conservation. Protect natural, cultural, historic resources, including, and this may include environmentally sensitive or green building design. This site does incorporate green building design features, including the modular units, the low energy lighting, and these types of things. In addition, the developer will be offering green upgrades if residents so choose, including things such as geothermal heating or solar panels. The fourth criteria is it an infill development? This most certainly is. It's redevelopment of a property that's in the urban area. It's currently vacant. It'll be consistent with the surrounding neighborhood and provide up to 46 new housing units. The final criteria could meet unique development, and that's development that significantly responds to the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, which we went through that lengthy list of comprehensive goals that it does respond to. Okay, we're getting there. Permitted uses for the table of uses allows residential PUD in this zone, and residential PUD allows for several types of uses. The proposed uses would all be permitted by right. So a couple more key things to talk about. Minimum development standards. The planned unit development ordinance allows flexibility in applying development regulations. The petitioner is proposing a variety of waivers for those development standards, which we'll discuss right now. The first waiver is asking for is the lots would have a minimum size of 1,600 square feet, which is a little smaller than the 2,000 normally required for a townhouse type common lot line development. The developer is proposing an average lot width of 17 feet for 16 units, the 16 townhouse units on the south, and that's a little not quite as wide as the normal requirement of 20 feet. Maximum floor area ratio is asking for that to be waived as necessary to construct the development. The apartment building in particular is going to have a higher higher floor area ratio than normally allowed in the R3 district. Minimum open space ratio, also same story. Minimum front yard setbacks. Developer is asking for a front yard setback of 1.5 feet on lot 133. Let me go here. Okay. So this, it's actually the wrong one. Okay, lot 133, along the western front yard, it's a corner lot, so the western front yard would only be 1.5 feet. For lot 118 as well, over on the east here, the eastern side yard would only be 1.5 feet. And the rear yard setback would also be 1.5 feet for this lot here. Let's see. The apartment building on lot 101 would have a maximum height of 51 feet 7 inches instead of the required 35. Access drives. The access drives, let's see. Access drives are wider than typically allowed. The zoning ordinance limits those to 85% of lot width, and the developer is asking for them to be up to 100% for a couple lots here on lot 106 and lot 112. And one other requirement, or one other request, is to allow for required parking for lot 118 to be located on lot 117, directly adjacent to lot 118. And this is to accommodate the turning radius that is required by our engineering specifications for this private alley. This alley to access lots 118 through 133 would be a private alley, which we'll talk about in the subdivision plat request. But it would be built to the minimum street standards or requirements of our ordinance. Okay, and although a waiver is not required for increased density, it's important to note development has a higher density in general than what's allowed in the R3 district, but this is actually, it's consistent and it's less dwelling units per acre than what was previously approved for this site. Okay, the final section here is discussing the criteria for approval of a planned unit development. There's 5 criteria. The first, that the proposed development is conducive to the public convenience at that location. It was an infill site surrounded by residential. The site has access to utilities already. And it would provide a variety of housing choices to that neighborhood. So staff feels that meets that criteria. The proposed development is designed and proposed to be operated so it will not be detrimental or injurious to the surrounding area or to public welfare. Concerns about privacy and stormwater management were raised during the first time this project went through Plan Commission and City Council. Those concerns have been addressed in the previous plan, and they're still addressed in this plan. The petitioner has stated he's willing to work with individual adjacent property owners to determine what the appropriate landscaping and screening treatment will be for each of those adjacent owners, whenever possible. The site has been designed to maintain or maximize compatibility with neighborhoods. There's a gradation of building heights from the busier Windsor Road along the south portion of the site, and then heading north, the heights of buildings would go down from 4 stories with the apartment building and 2.5 stories of these townhomes. They'd go down to a single story for the other types of townhomes. Okay. Criteria number 3. The proposed development is consistent with the goals, objectives, future land use of the comprehensive plan. We discussed that. Criteria 4. The proposed development is consistent with purpose and goals of the PUD portion of the zoning ordinance. We've discussed those. And the final criteria, the proposed development is responsive to the relevant recommended design features identified in Table 13.2 of the ordinance. And we've got that table attached to your packet at the end here. So there's several features. I'll just discuss a few of them. Transition area. The design of the site does incorporate a transition area type design, so that's from the busy street on Windsor down to the single-family homes on the north end. There's a gentle transition in intensity. Lighting. The plans do specify for low wattage LED lighting. Street lighting. The developer will coordinate with city engineer to maximize safety and visibility on street lighting. Access, we talked about, there's the cul-de-sac access drive and the private driveway or private alley. Access will accommodate fire engines, so fire department has reviewed and approved the proposed access. There's also going to be a perimeter sidewalk on the site. Basically, the north, east, and west portions of the site will have a perimeter sidewalk. It will provide direct access to every single lot of the site. And there's also a sidewalk in front of the townhomes on the southern half. And the perimeter sidewalk will provide for a circuit around the site, also provides connections to existing sidewalks on Windsor Road, and there is a sidewalk on the northwest corner of the site as well to get into the neighborhood up there to access those neighborhood amenities. Internal connectivity, just discussed that. Bicycle parking is included. Tree preservation, plan indicates healthy indigenous trees will be preserved when possible, and more trees are going to be planted than taken down. Open space provision. The plan includes provision of open space, a large area in the center of the Circle Drive. The areas for the drainage facility, and there's a common lot line here with the sidewalk. Passive recreation, the perimeter sidewalk will provide some opportunities for that in addition to the open space in the center of the development. Architectural consistency. The final plan includes a variety of compatible building designs, materials, and colors that will unify the development. Mr. Olson will talk about that. Primarily brick on the front elevations with hardy board siding. Architectural details will be repeated in the buildings to unify the development. And the last design feature is architectural design. The proposed development utilizes modular construction, which is inherently more energy efficient because the construction method and the exterior walls have more insulation. So with that, options for both cases, 2218 PUD 13 for the preliminary PUD and 2219 PUD 13 for the final PUD. Options are recommend approval as submitted, recommend approval with additional conditions, or recommend disapproval to City Council. Staff recommendation is to recommend approval on both counts, and with the final PUD, we recommend all of the requested zoning ordinance waivers be approved. And I'd be happy to take questions for staff.
Any questions for Mr. Engstrom? Mr. Otto?
The perimeter sidewalk that obviously connects to Windsor and then off on the northwest corner connects to some existing sidewalk. Who owns that sidewalk? Will this be public access sidewalk or will this be?
Good question. The sidewalk will be on, technically it'll be on private property, but there will be an easement for the use of all residents or anyone passing through the site.
He asked about the sidewalk in the northwest corner.
Oh.
That connects through to.
That's an existing easement that's been put there, and we're going to continue that easement.
So.
Yeah, I can, let me see if that's available here. Okay. So if you zoom in real tight, you can just barely see the sidewalk right below the I in Scoville. So it's an existing easement, yes.
I need some help in thinking about this extensive list of waivers. I assume that when we have requirements, there's some good planning reason that we have them. And so I need help in understanding why the good planning reasons that we have X as a side yard or side setback, all of these things should be waived because, you know, at least to some degree, it seems to me that the issues, for example, in buildings 134 to 118 could be addressed if you just went from 118 to 133 and sort of shifted things. So what is the, why do you have those regulations in, and why are you saying in each case, I really want help in each case.
Okay.
Why is it that they ought not to apply?
Sure. You know, one of the things I kind of skipped over was all these waivers are, except for the height waiver, are really due to the requirement that each townhouse be on its own parcel. So with the previous approval, it was all one large parcel, and there were several units on it, and it was a higher density. So it's, the waivers are an artifact of the requirement for separate parcels. Really, if this current development was proposed as one parcel, these waivers would not be required even. So we can go through each one and discuss.
Can I ask, so why do we still have the requirements on for single parcels? So I can understand if someone has one parcel and has apartment units or something, that's one issue, but since these are going to be sold off, so why do we have those, still have those requirements for single parcels if?
Okay, so an example would be, there's other areas like up in Behringer Commons where there's a similar townhouse development. It's like 10 townhouses in a row, and they're all on a single parcel. And then across the street, there's another townhouse
By
development.
a single parcel, you mean that they're rental units, or is this a?
Yes,
is this?
yes, they're all in a, all the units are on one larger parcel in that, and then across the
With
street.
one owner?
With one owner being the condo association, yes. So then across the street, there's the situation we have here, where there's several townhouse units in a row, and they're all on individual parcels. And up in that area, I don't think they had the variance requests because it's a larger, more of a sprawling suburb, if you will, subdivision. For this development, it's really about the density and the requirements for those individual lots that are driving this. If I understand your question, so you're asking why do we still have all these zoning requirements?
I mean, it seems like when we ask for a variance, there has to be some sort of a hardship why they can't comply with what we think are good reasons why we have the code the way we do. And so, you know, what is the reason other than, I understand the applicant wants to maximize the density. That's what we always want to do because that's where the revenue comes from. And we have the code to sort of say, well, this is,
okay.
So that's what I need help in thinking about.
Ms. Tyler.
I think what you're asking is kind of at the nub of why we offered the PUD as an option. PUD allows for special case developments like this one, which would be an infill in a residential development, without rezoning or doing a different lotting. You're not going to be able to meet all the development regulations of the zoning ordinance. However, those development regulations no longer apply when it's a PUD. But we are required to identify the areas where there are deviations. So the city does not need to review those the same way you would for a variance, say like in a already built development or in a regular development. Then you do need to meet those criteria for variances like a hardship and go to the zoning board. These are simply what is beneficial in a PUD. So in a PUD, the developer gets flexibility on development regulations, a lot of flexibility, potentially. The developer also gets some flexibility on uses, and that's important because our development patterns have maybe separated uses too much. In exchange for that flexibility on development regulations and uses, the city and the community, the public, wants to get something. And what the city of Urbana has wanted in our PUDs would be a higher level of design, environmental features, protections for surrounding properties, ways to deal with situations like this where you have an infill but you want to maintain a low zoning to fit in with the surroundings. So I know there was a previous application for the PUD. Unfortunately, that wasn't able to be implemented because of the financing requirements. So some of these requirements, as Jeff said, are really an artifact of having to put in those lot lines. So we really don't need to look at these zoning regulations in the same way that we might when you have to, say yes or no to a variance or even to a subdivision waiver. We do want to highlight them though, and that's what we're doing.
Mr. Otto?
Can you tell me, Building 101, you have a restriction of the height 51 feet 7 inches, which I think is less than what's in the drawing. What are on the adjacent properties, lot 356 and 357? Are those two-story houses, one-story houses? What's the sense of scale going to be there if you go from?
You'll be able to see that in our next presentation. We have elevations of most of the buildings. You'll be able to compare them and contrast them.
Including the buildings you're not building on the adjacent lots? I'm not asking about the buildings adjacent to your new buildings, but the existing houses. I'm looking at preliminary plat. And if you look adjacent on the west side of your planned development, the subdivision there, lot 357, 356, back on to building 101.
And they're all rental, those are all rental duplexes. on the left.
What's the height? My question is, what is the height of those buildings? Are
There's-
we going to be jumping from a one-story ranch type to 51 feet in 20 feet?
Yeah, we don't know. We can look that up for you.
I think that's something
Yeah.
that I'd like to know.
People in the audience, you'll have a chance to address the Plan Commission after we've heard from Mr. Olson. So,
That's all of my questions for staff.
Mr. Fell.
I was going to try to help clarify a couple issues that Mr. Otto raised. Is some of the variances requested here are due to the geometry of what's going on. For instance, one of the waivers is for a driveway that's 100% of the lot width. Well, that's a function of the zoning ordinance will only let you have a driveway that's a certain width or a percentage of your lot. But in order to access the Circle Drive, their front yard is only their driveway because it's a little access. So I think a lot of the waivers are things like that they're just kind of caused by the geometry of what's going on. For instance, also in these the townhomes to the south, an interior townhome has no side yard or front yard, and so it's not really, in a planning perspective, it's not really different to give the end one no side yard. Nobody in the middle has a side yard either. So I think a lot of these are kind of a function of how it's laid out, and it's kind of a particular anomaly in the zoning ordinance that some of these things happen. So, in instances like this too, it's he's asking for I think there's an open space waiver.
Yes.
But we have common space in the middle that's open space. So a lot of those things are kind of trade-offs of the function of the requirements of the zoning ordinance.
My question about the two end units is partially related to, I understand that the street will be deeded over. Is that just the perimeter to the pavement? So, what do we have there between the street and the end unit in terms of setback?
Mm-hmm.
And who owns the boulevard there, so to speak, or?
Which end unit are you talking about? 118?
So,
134.
Mhm.
Right when you drive in the driveway, the unit to the right. So is the pavement alone deeded to the city? Who owns the?
It's the entire right of way is deeded to the city, so that is public parkway, and that's the reason the lots can't expand farther for a deeper side yard there, is to fit in the public right of way with all the other lots.
And so what is the width of that right-of-way between the end of the building and the street?
60 feet. I'm
60.
sorry, from the building to the street?
Just that grass berm,
Yeah.
Okay, the entire right-of-way is 60 feet. I'm not sure, let's see. Yeah, the street's 31. So there's a sidewalk on the west side, and then the 31 feet of street pavements, and then probably an additional 15 feet or so.
Does the city have the ability to reduce the right-of-way? If we wanted to get rid of that, waiver?
Yeah, that could be waived in the subdivision plat approval.
Sort of a follow-up. I
Mr.
assume
Fowler?
the petitioner's building the road and deeding it over. The city's not building the road?
Is that correct?
Who's building the road that's getting deeded over to the city?
I think some of these things can be clear to you if we can show the architectural. But if you have other questions about this is just really a civil engineering drawing, and we have a civil engineer in the audience. We can talk more about it, but
Any further questions for Mr. Engstrom? Nope. Okay, briefly on the process, so I'm going to, Mr. Olson, the petitioner, will get a chance to present his drawings and his case, and then we'll have any other supporters will be able to address the Plan Commission, then anyone opposed, then anyone else. Mr. Olson will then have another chance if you want to talk to us, and then we will close the public hearing and then begin to discuss the case. So, Mr. Olson, if you could introduce yourself formally. If you could state your names for the record and sign the book.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Olson. I'll be assisting with the presentation.
is this all set? Yeah, we'll get it. Just go ahead and move it up to the first one. That's the last slide.
I know. Did you state your name?
We're going to do this quickly. It's over 2 hours since you've been here, so we're going to.
You're Gary Olson, for the
I'm
record.
Gary Olson, that's right.
Yeah, and
Brian Bradshaw with BKB Engineering.
all right, thank you. Please proceed.
What you're seeing now is the site before the demolition. You can see the roofs of all the buildings adjacent to us. You can see that all of this has been taken out, but this is how it was when we first bought the property. This indicates from a roof standpoint, you're seeing all the roofs. You can see there's a fairly deep rear yard on the north buildings. That's basically one of the major changes we made is we used to have a larger driveway, and in fact the driveway had some of our buildings focused to the neighbors to the north. And we decided to go with a smaller cul-de-sac kind of approach, which means all the headlights as they go around really are hidden from view from any neighbors to the north, west, or east. And that was intentional. Those buildings are primarily the one-story buildings, and I'll show you where there's an option for them to have a small second level if they would like. The three buildings to the north are 5 units in a row. There's 2 large ones on the ends and 3 smaller ones in the center of each of those. There's a long gray building, and that's a one continuous roof over the 16 townhouses. And then you see a blue roof, and that's adjacent to the rental properties to the west. And I'm going to show you the plans of all these. One of the things that you don't see with all the lines is that there really is some space adjacent on the ends of the buildings. What we should point out is that each of the town houses has its own 10-foot wide court in front of the building, so there's an entry to a court that could be used for landscaping or pretty much anything else you want to do on the outside. And we do have a closed-in rear yard that has a 5-foot fence around it, so it really has a private yard in the front and a private yard in the back. And because they're all nested right next to each other, there are no side yards between the townhouse units. This is an example of what we call our villas. I'm going to show you a larger version of that, but there's 2 large units on either end and 3 smaller units in the center. This is a larger version of the small unit and the large unit. You can see that we're trying to have smaller units for people who would be maybe single or perhaps just a couple, and larger units that could expand if they would like. Over the master bedroom, you can, as an option, have access to a second level, which would give you another kind of a master suite space. We have had a unit like this, and basically the upper unit is used when visitors come, children, friends, and it gives them a separate quiet space from the lower level. We're showing what each unit would be from the front and from the back. The large, taller units on the rear elevation indicate that that owner opted for a unit above the master suite below, so they have kind of a place for visitors and relatives perhaps to stay when they're in Champaign County. These are larger renderings of the materials we're planning to use. Wherever you see kind of the auburn color, that's going to be brick. Everything else that looks like siding is hardy board siding, which is probably the best siding on the market. And I'm going to show a typical townhouse unit, starting with a basement plan on the right-hand side, a first floor plan showing the rear yard, the front yard, privacy in the front, privacy in back, a patio, kitchen, entryway, dining room, and a stairway to the second level, which is 1 level over. We're showing a master suite, a large second bedroom with private bath, balconies looking towards the south. And then for those who elect to convert a third level, there's a loft room with a roof terrace, a very large roof terrace, almost as large as the patio below, that looks inward to the site. And other areas are additional attic space, and so that's not part of the unit unless they opt to have that roof terrace and loft space above. So the unit, looking from the front view, we've shown how the face of the building looks. There will be a brick fence in front of it, as you can see further over in the elevation, with a door and a fixed open area, but you can't. It's a fixed gate, and the other one is an open gate to get in. What you're seeing mostly in the front here is almost all masonry, and the roof slopes back, and the reason we have a guardrail there is that it's 42 inches. It's a guardrail like you'd have on any balcony anywhere else. But that's a feature that is inward-looking, and I think it's going to have a nice open feeling and a lot of variety. The side view, again, we show it in black and white and in color with some trees, and that's the side view on the west elevation. You can show the continuation of a brick enclosed patio, and that has a walkway in front of it. In a rear view, again, we're showing a cutoff where you would have a white fence. You can see there's a lot of glass, and this shows a situation. That's how it would look if there was no roof terrace. It's the same height as it would be if it had the roof terrace or not, because it's higher in the center. And the apartment building has parking, not underground parking, but it's the lower level, and we have 5 units on each floor. They're all similar, except on the top floor they'd have all cathedral ceilings. Again, each unit has a balcony, an open walkway to get to the 2 stairs, and an elevator. Again, these are the typical layouts for the small apartment and somewhat larger apartment. These are all designed to be modular dimensions, so all these modules can actually be put on a flatbed trailer. So the modules have to be no greater than 15 feet, 11 feet wide to fit on a 16-foot wide trailer. The rear west elevation of the building is, as you can see it right there, with balconies. And on the main floor, we'll call it a patio that's raised up because we have parking below. An elevation of the end elevation of that building, and a partial black and white and a kind of a colored version of the taller building. What we're featuring is, and you'll see some examples, modular architecture, the stormwater best management practices, concrete streets, walkways, and the perimeter path, which is about a third of a mile if you walk around the entire path, and it leads to the northwest and also to the sidewalk in front of the our project, will lead to the east and west. Our driveway is about a half a mile west of the driveway to Clark Lindsay Village, the main driveway. So it's really walking distance. Across the street is Meadowbrook Park, which is very easy to access. And what is modular architecture? Why modular? Well, it's greener form of building, less material and time wasted during construction, super insulated for greater energy savings. Buildings are constructed with greater precision in a climate-controlled environment. It's less costly per square foot, allows for construction to be completed in a much faster time frame, and a lot of people think, well, it's just a trailer. Well, it's not a trailer at all. It's designed by me, and we try to work with the modules that are set up to fit trailers. These are some examples of one of my buildings that we designed in Champaign. We did have all the staff from the city of Urbana be able to go through it and see it. 9-foot ceilings. Because everything is in the floor, you don't have any lowered ceilings for different reasons, and this is the final product. We have 96 students living in that building, typically ever since it was opened 2.5 years ago. Building that's on Lincoln Avenue that you might recognize is also a PUD, one of the first PUDs, and it's all modular. Although, if you look at it, you would not be able to tell that. And here's a broader view of the whole thing. And now it's your turn.
Well, we've already gone over a lot of these elements here, but I just wanted to highlight some of the pavement elements that we had on the plan. Of course, you can see in green is the existing sidewalk that we've been talking about that goes to Scoville Street. In blue is the proposed sidewalk, and as Gary said, it's about a third of a mile of 5-foot wide sidewalk around the perimeter. And that's a significant increase of what would be normally required from just a subdivision ordinance standpoint, which would be just around the perimeter of the cul-de-sac. So that's really an addition to this plan. In gray is the public cul-de-sac that we've been discussing. Probably one of the more important elements of that design is lot 134, which is in the middle of the cul-de-sac. That's a nice green space that will really be a focal point for the subdivision. It could be used for recreational purposes, and I think we envision it as a gathering space for the residents to use for parties or for neighborhood meetings. The red is the private alley. It's a private alley, but it's designed to Urbana standards. We've worked with the fire department on both the cul-de-sac and the alley to make sure that we can accommodate their largest emergency vehicles. You see the hammerhead at the end of the private alley is a substantial item that will accommodate their large vehicles. On the next slide is the utilities. In purple, we can see the existing sanitary sewer surrounds the perimeter of the site. We're going to utilize that sanitary sewer. We'll have taps into the existing sanitary sewer and provide service lines to all of the units. For units 118 to 133, we're going to provide a new 8-inch sanitary sewer in the east-west direction that will tie into the existing line. This plan has been approved by Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District along with the city staff. The water main is a new 6-inch line. It's pretty much a standard loop around the cul-de-sac. We're going to tie into the existing 12-inch water main that's on the south side of Windsor Road. We're providing 3 fire hydrants around the site for fire protection. And again, this plan has been approved by Illinois American Water Company and staff. We've also talked to Ameren for gas and electric, and they will be able to accommodate the needs of the subdivision. We'll provide easements as necessary to meet their needs as well. Next. This is the drainage plan. The red boundary is generally the watershed area that flows through the site. The site is 4 acres. The overall watershed, including the off-site areas, is about 6 acres. The drainage typically goes south and west. It's picked up with 2 storm inlets, 1 on site and 1 just west of the west property line. Both sewers or inlets are tributary to an existing 24-inch storm sewer system that's along the north side of Windsor Road. You can see the cross-hatched area is the amount of existing impervious area that we've had on site. Totals just under 2 acres. Of course, some of that has been demolished, but that's still incorporated into our drainage calculations. It's also important to note that when the storm sewer gets surcharged, that the storm water from the 6 acres overland flows to the west. So, next slide. This is our proposed watershed. The overall watershed's the same, 6 acres. The area on the west side constitutes about 10% of the overall drainage area. That area will be allowed to leave the site undetained. We will route the remaining 90% of the site through a proposed storm sewer system that you can see on this plan. It'll discharge into the stormwater detention basin located at the south side of the site. It will slowly discharge through a small pipe that is located in the middle of the detention basin and discharge to the existing 24-inch storm sewer system. Our new site contains just over 3 acres of impervious area, so we're increasing it by approximately 1 acre. And I won't bore you with a bunch of numbers, but I will leave you with one, is our, when we look at our total outflow for a 50-year storm event, when we compare our existing site to our proposed site will have 40% of the outflow that the existing site is. So we're significantly reducing the rate of outflow with this development, and with that we'll be protecting the downstream neighbors from our stormwater runoff. I have prepared a stormwater management plan, and we'll be submitting it to Mr. Bennett next week.
One question I think I didn't answer, the cul-de-sac and the entry drive is going to be put in by the developer.
That's correct.
It'll be maintained over the years by this. It's a public street, but basically it'll be put in by us.
Yeah. All the new infrastructure will be put in by the developer.
Any questions? Ms. Upaban.
How many people total could live here?
I'm expecting, we have 46 units.
Okay.
The maximum that we agreed to with the city was 48 units. And I'm expecting an average of about 2.5 people per unit.
Legally, how many people could live there? What's the maximum that could live there?
Typically, we have 2 bedrooms.
What's the maximum?
So would that be 4 people per unit?
For a dwelling unit, the legal limit is 3 people, 3 unrelated
Three
people
unrelated
plus
or
a
4.
family.
Okay.
So there's no limit on the family size.
Great. Thank you.
Further questions? Mr. Hopkins.
The previous proposal sort of had a strategy, a theme, and I'm guessing that this one ends up with a different marketing theme, just because it seems to be a different mix of uses. So 2 things I'm trying to think through. One is phasing. The other had a specific phasing strategy that seemed like protection against market change or rate of market development. And I'm having a little trouble imagining how this is going to be done, because you've got a rental apartment, you've got 2.5-story row houses, and you've got villas, which seem to be 3 very different markets to me.
Well, we are looking for a market that we know is out there. We do have a pretty large buffer between what would be the townhouse and the townhomes. We have that whole cul-de-sac area in the center, and those would be our first priority to build those units.
Which units would be first?
Our plan would be that we would build from the west side to the east side, the 15 units that are basically on the north half of the site.
Right, okay.
And we would then work on 4 townhouse units at a time. And we're not going to build any units until they're pre-sold. And you came up here, and this is Michelle Olson. Did you sign in? Do you have a comment?
Michelle Olson. Yeah, you got to follow the rules.
Exciting girls. I'm Michelle Olson, so I'm
Thank you.
half owner, I guess. We've been doing market research, in particular in light of what Clark Lindsay Village is doing, building their little villas. And our people of baby boomer age are coming to us and saying they want different kinds of options. Some are saying that they would prefer to move into, okay. Some of them would say that they would prefer to move into perhaps what we thought were going to be condos, but a villa situation that would have 2 to 3 bedrooms so that they could downsize and not have the exterior maintenance, but still could have gardens and plots and things like that. Others have told us that most have told us that they want to sell their big homes. They want to be rid of the 2 furnaces and ecologically sound and have a chance to lock up and leave. They are telling me that they would like to have units like the villas. We also are now learning about people who say they don't want to have equity in a home. They want to rent an apartment. In fact, we've actually met several couples like that who have sold their big home and they're keeping their equity because they're not quite sure what the future will hold. So they say if they had a luxurious apartment to move into, could hold on to their equity, they could decide if they were going into a senior living facility or possibly move nearer to one of their children in another area in the future. But this gives them a holding pattern, so we're seeing that. The townhomes are really aimed at making this more of a multi-generational community. We have single professionals that are coming into town that don't want to be bothered with maintaining a home but want to own something. And so the idea would be you would have a maybe 3-level story, but it would be people, young couples coming in here. The community also opens itself up to young working professional families with children. In other words, I often wonder why my son has a big house with a big yard when both of them are teaching and working and they have a child. You've got Meadowbrook Park across the street. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Our idea is marketing the villas first. That's the lowest density, that's the lowest height, and that's what people are coming and telling me they want to do. That apartment building, of course, conjures up everybody going, apartments. We're not talking about a lot of young people living there. We're talking about that being the last facility that we put in. So I'm thinking we're doing marketing, and we've been working with the bankers, of course. The bankers have said to us, we really don't want you to do a condo association. Those are not selling. They're not doing well in Urbana. We want, if you put a single lot underneath them, then we'll go forward with it. So that's sort of our strategy. It is really more a multi-generational community now than what we perceived.
Yeah, so, okay, so that's sort of what I was trying to figure out, because previously it was a
baby boomer.
Targeted baby boomer generation, so it's both, but the apartment building is intended, I understand, it makes sense.
I can't say who it's for.
I think young professionals will live there more than students, if you're considering students.
I'm less concerned about that than sort of how does the thing cohere as a PUD from a marketing point of view. If it doesn't develop, and one of the things about some PUDs is that the market changes or something happens, and this one's not very big, so it's not that big a problem. But yeah, I'm looking for robust futures if the market changes again. So sort of related to that, there are lots of small pieces of this that presumably have to be managed by a homeowners association.
We are going to recommend that once we have what we think would be a third of the units sold, that the people who are really the first ones there will create that. And I think it's necessary.
Because somebody has to own the common areas, correct?
Yes.
And that's going to be a homeowners association.
Yes.
But initially, that'll be the developer.
Right.
So I sort of feel like there are 3 homeowners associations here. I'm trying to imagine the people in the villas maintaining the center of the
I think
oval.
It could break down that way.
Because the private street is got snow plowing, and it's basically a shared parking lot with private spaces. But the other people live on a public street. I mean, these are not the same functions. So it seems a little You've at least thought about the fact that there may be more than one, and how
What
they
we do in
might.
Florida, we have we have several condo associations, depending on we have fees that we pay. Yeah.
But within a small area, it's not one association. It's anyway. So how all of these are going to be individual parcels.
Yes.
So, and I understand why. I think the banks are wrong, but that's
From the
not something we can
standpoint
change.
doing condos, it would be much easier.
Right. So, in particular, the sidewalk in what I would call the northeast quadrant, going from the left around the upper part. If I were a lot owner in any of those lots, I would want that sidewalk not to be there. And essentially for two reasons. I can't figure out who would use it, number one. And number two, it's going to be my responsibility to take care of it. Because it's, as I understand it, a public sidewalk.
You're talking about the walking path around the
Yeah.
exterior? Oh. It's something that we always use in our place in Florida. Everybody likes to walk around the walking
Okay,
path.
but I don't know who owns it and who maintains it, because it's going through a bunch of backyards now. Again, if it was a condo association, it would be simple. But
It's on its own easement. It's not owned by.
and it's not a city,
No.
so it's owned by the homeowners association. Okay? Well, and then for the apartment, we have a landlord on a separate parcel. And saleable is a separate entity.
It's got its own parcel.
And I'm having a hard time imagining this homeowners association that's going to manage all these bits and pieces of very diverse property and how that's going to work. And I don't know, I guess I don't have a solution, but
If you wiped out all the property lines, you basically have, the unit is now an apartment building. We had two of those.
Yeah, I know.
Before.
It-
So
it-
it's
it-
the same kind of,
But before, it
In
was
order
all
to-
condos. Everything was condos. A condo association has a particular set of legal commonalities and responsibilities. So I guess what I'm thinking is, for this layout to be maintained over time, it seems to me that the nature of the homeowners association or associations, or the covenants of deeds among the lots of common responsibilities, becomes a really important part of the long-term success of the PUD. Anyway, that's why I wanted to ask these questions
Thinking about
about.
a PUD implies change, it implies new things.
I understand, but it also implies an
Creative.
intentional strategy of developing something that's going to be, sort of as a unit, successful. And I think I understand almost all the pieces of the sort of physical design layout that's going to, why they're there. That's right. I think the legal relationships among the lots over time are going to be important.
that's being hammered out by our attorney right
Yeah,
now, but we're
okay.
waiting for approval.
Okay.
To go ahead with that.
Further questions?
Good comments, Lou.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for straightening those chairs. You had your hands up earlier. Would you care to address the Plan Commission on this case? And if you could state your name and sign the sheet, I'd appreciate it.
Linda Bauer, Lot 2 on this diagram. The reason I had my hand up is those duplexes that were discussed to the west of the property. Those are all
Immediately to the west of the apartment
those are all
building?
one story. You know, we've watched this area go from the swim club to an empty lot to with a swimming pool and a what do you call it, attractive nuisance, to now an empty lot with just grass and weeds. I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I have some concerns. I'm still a little concerned about drainage. I know despite all the analyses and so on about where the water runs off, I know it runs directly into my backyard because we're on the north side and water drains right down because our lot seems to be going down that way. So I have a little concern about that, and especially because the permeable pavement is not in the plan, how much is still going to go north. I know you have this stormwater detention basin for the south, but again, a little concerned about that. I'm not too concerned about the sidewalk, and I think the developer in good faith has said that they're going to provide barriers, whether it's a fence or greenery, a screen, yes, my husband, Steve, a screen. I do kind of agree that it's kind of packing a lot in a small area, and but on the other hand, I don't have a better plan. I don't know if anybody else here has a better plan. Here's a developer that's willing to take this land and turn it into something, hopefully with tax revenue to the city. I do have a question about, compared to the condos, what is the price range of these particular homes? You know, I think we're probably maybe still looking at baby boomers, but are we kind of changing that market a little bit? So, you know, I'm basically supportive. I think there's some challenges getting all this done, and Mr. Hopkins, you had some really good points about who's going to take care of what. In fact, to be honest, the fact that the cul-de-sac is now a city street means if there are some drainage problems and more stuff coming off the street, there's probably a little less recourse for us as homeowners with the city than there is with a private developer. So.
Well, the public's work. Oh, we still got an engineer here.
So anyway, basically, I'd like to, you know, just state my support with some caveats about the fact that the nature has changed a little bit.
And you don't have any reservations about the size of the one apartment building that?
Well, no. I mean, there were going to be two very
big ones
tall
before, yeah.
buildings, and even now, you know, there's some tall evergreens, so we don't see very far past the trees anyway. So, and I really appreciate the redesign, so we don't have a lot of driveways facing our house. So that's appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? No?
We've been there almost about 25 years.
Well, thank you for your commentary. Okay, anyone else want to address the Plan Commission? I think there was the one question about price there. If you just want to maybe step up and just arrange, just so we can get in the record, since the question was asked.
We're going to have some units that are be in the high 100s.
Mm-hmm.
The larger units will be closer to 250, 235 to
Okay, that's great. Just wanted to get that question answered. Thank you.
On the drainage issue.
Oh, yeah, that,
The drainage is all coming to the south.
so you're grading it so that it's sloping towards Windsor, essentially?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's an isolated drainage issue in the backyard, but we won't be adding to it. It'll all be our development, all the units.
Good to know. Okay, well,
Can I ask one more drainage-related question? I think, before we go.
what if I say no?
Then I won't. I'll respect your authority as chair.
Go for it.
You showed the drainage area of that size, and along the west side, there's an area that doesn't go into the detention pond that will drain, quote-unquote, naturally, which I assume means to the west. And, you know, I'm sitting here looking at that roof line of the buildings along the west side, and is the water off those roofs going to be caught in your drainage and redirected back into the detention pond? Or that's a lot of roof water that essentially is, where will that water go off the west half? You've got the ridge there that's pretty much continuous that would fall off into the area that's not covered by your detention system.
Well, we're gonna have underground drain lines for the roofs. That'll go back to our proposed storm sewer system.
So the only water, so the roof water, all of it, even on the west side of that, will be captured and go in. The only water that won't be contained then is the water that actually falls on the soil.
That would generally be true, yes, unless there's a surcharge of the roof drains. In the calculations, I'd assume that for a 50-year storm event, those roof areas will drain to the west. So that's accounted for in the calculations. I guess it's also important to know right now that entire area is impervious, it's a parking lot, and it's going to the west.
I mean, I understand that we're actually starting from square one because what was done when that was paved 30 or 40 years ago probably, I mean, so that's sort of, the current situation is, I'm just wanting to know.
Well, we can't account for the current situation in our drainage accounts.
You can?
Yes.
I see. Okay.
Brad Bennett can want to speak to that, but
Sure.
that is influence.
Okay.
I can make a brief comment. I mean, the way our stormwater management ordinance is written is, you know, for a green site development, you know, greenfield type development where you take in essentially agricultural land or, you know, unused land, the stormwater management requirements for that are a little different than for infill development. For infill development as a way to encourage that, what we say is they don't have to provide detention for the existing impervious areas, which would go back to what was on the site before they demoed it. It's just for any increase in impervious area, they have to meet, you know, what the current stormwater detention requirements are.
Thank you. That clarifies.
Great. I think that does it. So we'll close the public hearing and we'll enter discussion and talk about whether we want to, you know, how deep into it do we want to get at this time? I know we'd like to make a decision, but it's getting late. How much concern is there over some of the waivers? Are they going to require some thought in the discussion, et cetera? Mr. Pell?
I'm going to throw out a couple points. Does the city want to consider requiring a sidewalk around the perimeter of the cul-de-sac? There is none now, and this is, I assume, intended to be a heavily pedestrian area, so if somebody's walking there right now, they have to walk in the street to get home?
Yeah, we're intending to address that in the next case about the subdivision preliminary plat. That's one of the waivers they're applying for. Basically, our position is every lot does have access to a sidewalk if it's either the perimeter sidewalk or something else. So we are supportive of that. Rather than having a sidewalk around the cul-de-sac, which has several driveways that pedestrians would have to be dodging cars, and also it would increase the pervious pervious area of the site. So we feel the perimeter sidewalk is adequate.
It's prudent even if somebody who lives in the middle north unit and wants to get home has to walk 2 blocks farther to go all the way around. Consideration, okay? And I have 2 other points, I think, for discussion. One bothers me a little bit and one bothers me a little bit more. The previous application, in my opinion, did a very good job of fronting this development towards Windsor Road. In this application, the long townhouse building obviously backs up to Windsor Road. So now our view from Windsor Road is the back of these units. I'm not sure how I feel about that. And the other variation that bothers me a little bit more is previously we had 2 buildings that we gave a waiver for the height of the building, and those again backed up onto Windsor Road and were away from the neighbors. And now we have a building that is 51 feet to the median of the roof, so it's actually much taller than that to the peak, that's backed right up against the neighbors, and that bothers me a little bit more.
Anything? Anybody else? Or you finished, Mr. Pell? You have anything?
For now, I'm finished.
Okay. Ms. Upaban.
Well, it seems like if the variance is for what should be 35 feet, if they knocked it down to 2 stories, it would meet the standard. But that's that 3rd story that's causing the need for the variance, and that's an awfully tall. I guess I feel okay about the density, I guess, but I'm sort of with Mr. Otto, like we have these suggested requirements for a reason.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. And it just bothers me, even though it's a PUD, and I understand that it's not the same as individual lot lines, I'm not comfortable with this right now. Somebody needs to convince me, I guess. It's a lot of variances.
Anything further?
Yeah.
Mr. Otto?
I've got a question for Mr. Engstrom. Back to the sidewalk issue. You said that, because of the density, a lot of the area where we would have sidewalk is already paved, and if we put a sidewalk in, people would be having to dodge cars. But actually, people are not able to park their car in the right-of-way, are they? So I'm looking at Exhibit E. And it's back to this question of what actually gets deeded to the city or what's city right-of-way. And I see the dotted line. It seems to me that because so much of it is already paid, to actually formally connect so there is a sidewalk wouldn't add that much, and it would actually meet sort of the standard subdivision requirements for a sidewalk. But if you're suggesting that they would have to be dodging cars, are you saying that if their car bumper clears the paved area of the street, they're on their own property?
I was generally talking about cars backing out of the driveway or out of the garages.
So in other words, there's so many driveways that as you're walking, if you were walking on a sidewalk around the cul-de-sac, you would constantly be in danger of being backed into, I think was the point he was
Well, that's always true. That's not unique to this. Is there, in front of those garages, enough homeowner setback that they can park a car in front of their garage without being on city right-of-way?
No, there's not. And if you look at the southern part of the cul-de-sac, there's also some parking spaces on the southeast corner. Actually, it's not in this Exhibit E. It's in the site plan, or I'm sorry, it's in the preliminary plat for the next case, where there is some parking shown partially on city right away and partially on the private property. So those basically would be allowed by the waiver.
Are you talking about the, Mr. Engstrom, the handicap parking spots at the? or
Yes.
is- Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
I mean, there's a lot to like about this, and I certainly like the idea of infill. And, you know, the overall conception of the buildings, you know, I'm fine with, but, you know, I am concerned about, the waivers. I'm concerned about the height issue, as Mr. Fell pointed out, that previously those were onto the street, and I'm concerned about the lack of clarity about what actually is being deeded to the city, and if it's anything more than the pavement, then it seems like our usual sort of rules about setbacks and right-of-ways need to be given some consideration here. I'd like to have some things cleared up there, because I'm seeing the dotted line around outside of the paved area of the street. And if that actually is,
Yeah, that is the right of way.
that is the right-of-way.
Parkway, yes.
And normally, people would not be allowed to park on that.
Normally, yes. But this, as part of the PUD, that requirement would be waived as well.
Anything further, Mr. Otto?
I want to second Mr. Fell's concern about, you know, it strikes me that what really one is going to see from Windsor is a row of continuous garage doors and an uninterrupted roof that extends for whatever the length of that building is. And if it is part of the nature of a PUD that the city gets to ask for some design things and so on, I would really like to see that long, expansive roof broken up with something that's visually more interesting. I understand why it's not, I mean, I don't know, maybe it is feasible to flip the building and put the parking on the inside. It seems like it would be more consistent. Could the building be pulled down where the cars are parked and keep the parking on the interior so it would be in line more with the other buildings, and somehow or another make it more attractive? But I've still got some things I have to swallow hard on. Although I would really like to see this property developed. I like the.
So am I correct that that view would be the elevation in Building D, Exhibit E?
Yeah.
So essentially, it's the south elevation is what we're talking about. Versus if we recommended to try to turn it around, then I guess it's not garages, actually. It's sliding glass doors and balconies. The roof is uninterrupted, I guess.
So is that grade roof line we're seeing there actually not accurate? Is that interrupted by gable ends over the garages?
I don't think there are garages.
Just parking spaces.
Oh, they're not.
I don't think so.
Oh, I was looking, you referred us to Exhibit E, so that's
Yeah,
the south.
building, yeah, this Building D.
Oh, I'm on a different page
Yeah.
than you.
The preliminary plat and the design are not the same.
Yeah.
They're, one is designed, the plat is laid out with what looks like garages. And
This is a
the drawing here is laid out with parking spaces, so I don't know which we're actually.
Okay. Yeah, the memo for the PUD cases actually has the incorrect preliminary plat attached to it.
Oh.
Just caught that.
Look at that.
So what we
So
would be
that's
seeing
where-
from the street is
so that's-
page 16.
Okay.
Go ahead and turn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
No wonder I didn't like it.
So, yeah, it is also labeled Exhibit E.
Yeah,
There's
right.
too many Exhibit Es here, but if you look down the right-hand corner, it's page 16. So that's what would be facing on to Windsor.
Yeah, excuse me, I just, I pulled it up there so you could see it, what it would look like, more or less.
So you do have balconies, sliding doors, parked cars, and an uninterrupted roof line. A long one.
That white fence would extend across the whole back?
Yeah.
And the fence is between the parked cars and to give some privacy.
Yes.
Yes. So that would come all the way across. And the people would park out here, and then they would have some privacy from their back door.
So you'd be able to see the perspective, with the fence there and
Yeah,
what, what the residents would see when they enter the fence.
It's helpful.
I have a question for staff and
Mr.
a
Fell.
comment. This may be a minute point, but with the way this is designed with 3/4 of somebody's driveway on the public right-of-way, does the city have to maintain their driveway now that's on public land?
No, they don't.
Okay.
We don't.
In looking at this, I certainly don't want to try to redesign things. But does it make sense to take the townhouse units and just flip them over so they're and then they could move south a little bit, they front on Windsor Road, and then their parking is off what is now a public street instead of a private drive?
And that would require them to move the detention?
No, the detention can stay, we just flipped, again, I'm not trying to redesign, I'm trying to help solve some problems
Oh, yeah, there's
here.
enough. Yeah, I see.
If we just take the whole block and flip it over, we probably need a drive-through maybe to get around, because we have parking spaces all the way to the east, but is that something city staff would support? If it was
Well, some of these questions we did raise and review and had good dialogue with the architect and the engineer, and, I think they would probably be able to explain some of the constraints that led to this proposal.
I can address that specifically. We did look at that, to be specific, and we couldn't get the hammerhead turnaround. And I guess you limit about half of the units if you just think about putting those adjacent to the cul-de-sac, the parking spaces. And then if you think about putting the private alley on the north side of those units, you come up with two problems. One is you have a double roadway, for lack of a better term, side by side, and then you couldn't fit a hammerhead turnaround in that space.
can't we, again, I don't want to design this for you, but can't we just pull in off the public street? I mean, not two roadways, but
Or create another alleyway off of the cul-de-sac?
well, the south part of the cul-de-sac becomes the road that all these people back out onto, and we just extend it to the east and do a one-way around the north end of the detention basin.
I think one of the issues with that was the easternmost units on the row houses, they don't actually front on the cul-de-sac. So I think those might be lost.
Right.
If you want to draw it out for me.
All right, we'll do that.
Mr. Hopkins, do you have?
Well, I'm at the same place Mr. Fell is. It seems to me that there are opportunities to clean up some of the ambiguities about who's responsible for what and how there's access
Okay. I think I'm kind of in the same place. And in particular, the most concerning thing, I think, certainly the positioning of this, I think it's, I could probably live with that, the townhouses in the front, or to the south. But the height of the apartment building, I think, is the thing that bothers me the most. I think it's too tall. I don't, but, again, I'll echo that I love the infill idea. I like the, a lot of it. So, Ms. Tyler?
It's getting a little late. I mean, we did want to mention that there is a Plan Commission meeting for another case that will be in 2 weeks. So that provides a little time to think through, rather than trying to act at this late hour, think through and maybe give the petitioner some time to consider some of the comments that are being made. There is that opportunity.
What do you think? I think I would like to think some more. But, I think it's 95% or so great, But it's that last little bit and again, as Mr. Fell said, I'm even less qualified than he is to redraw your drawings. So, and not qualified at all, yeah, right. So, having said that, just let us think about it, I guess, and we'll continue this case unless I hear an objection.
I just want to sort of reiterate a point that I agree with Mr. Fitch. I don't think that the townhouse situation bothers me enough to think it needs to be undone, but the height of the building adjacent, the height of the apartment building adjacent to those condos or eventually houses over there, that bothers me a little bit, so.
I have several things that, I'd like to have addressed before we reconsider. One is I would like to have, city staff explain to me why you could have a 2-story building that close to the street, so the end of the townhouses. I'm concerned about that there's only, it's city property, but it seems to me that there's reasons why we want to have setbacks around corners. Some of it's for appearance, some of it's for safety, and so on. And, yeah, I'm not talking about the alley, so you drive in the driveway facing north.
You're talking about the
on the
west
right-hand
end?
side.
Oh.
I want a justification for why we would allow that in this context, but typically we would say there's got to be some setback there. And I think I'd like to, for the designers and engineers, to explain why one couldn't flip the building around so that what is now the north side of that building would be at the end of the parking lot, and you would have the same alley you have now, private alley, but you would enter it on the north side, not off of the P. You would pull the building out closer to the street, so that the front yard actually becomes the detention area, and the cars would be behind, the garage doors would be on the interior. You would still have a 2-way private alley. You would just access it closer up to the stem of the P. It seems, and if that's not feasible, are there some design elements that you could use to break up that huge expanse of roof through there to just make it more visually interesting? That's a massive length. So those are your points.
Okay. Anything further before do I need a motion to continue? Yeah. Thank you. It is late. Mr. Hopkins moves for a continuance. Mr. Fell seconds. We'll do this on the record, I guess.
Mr. Fell? Yes. Mr. Fitch?
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins? Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Ms. Stake?
Yes.
Ms. Upa-Bant?
Yes.
And Ms. Bynum?
Okay, now, the next case, I guess is contingent on, this is old business plan case number 2217S13. Is contingent on some of the decisions that yet to be made, so I suppose we can just continue that by acclamation?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll continue that one also for the next meeting in 2 weeks. We do have, I don't think we have any other new business. We do have audience participation. And so thank you, gentlemen and lady.
She can get this.
All right, Ms. McCusick, you've already signed in. So I'm going to limit you to 5 minutes. And as we've been doing recently in the audience participation section, but please feel free to address the Plan Commission.
Okay. This is,
Yeah, the city's website has been behaving very poorly of late.
so, the link, at this, temporary city website for the Plan Commission is, here under Board Meetings, Plan Commission meeting
Mhm.
for December 5th, because, there
Yes.
are the, minutes for the 2 meetings that were approved tonight.
Mhm.
And, I'm opening the, one for the, of November 21st.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And because you've approved this meeting, minutes tonight, it seemed like it's just one motion, the 2 minutes from this meeting, and then November 7th at the same time. But I didn't check the November 7th minutes, but I did check these. I came to this one so I could say that I didn't see Terry there. I only saw Jeff and Andrew Fell. And also, the things were called under new public hearings, but none of the changes to the agenda, approval of minutes, communications, or for that matter, audience participation, none of those topics were called for, and it was explained that there wasn't a quorum, so it wasn't a meeting, but that the cases were being opened because the notification had gone out. But I think that the way that the minutes are written up, it indicates, it makes it look like those items were called, I guess. So that might be a little bit minor, but I've been trying for a long time to get, I guess, more procedural things addressed in their own right, because they do have an effect on how you handle cases, and one of them is communications. Another thing is, sending on your decision to City Council on the basis of draft minutes. And that plays into the question of, should every Plan Commission meeting on the annual calendar be held, even if there aren't cases? You know, the chair is allowed into the Plan Commission, well, in the zoning ordinance or city code or your bylaws, one of the three places, it says the chair can cancel meetings, but I question them canceling them even if there isn't a case, because I think that, okay, this question of communications, say, the Allied Waste, I'm not sure whether they sent their letter to staff before the packets went out, and it did get into your packets or not. I didn't quite catch that, but I don't feel like Chair Fitch gave the right answer to them to say that they should pursue their answer from staff. They have something they need answers to before, and it's part of the Plan Commission's accountability for their decision. What's in that material, and the public needs to see it contemporaneously. Not things are made. Your text said things are made a matter of the record, but like the staff memoranda are not made a matter of the minutes that you approve. That's one of the communications. You look at the minutes, draft minutes are up for approval, and they don't include the staff memoranda, and so.
Going to have to give you about 1 more minute, Ms. McCusick. And for the record, that communication.
I want if I have 5 minutes, don't I get them all together?
Yes, you do. You started at 10:44, and now it's 10:49.
Could I keep going?
No.
Oh.
I do want to say, for the record, that, yeah, I think that in regard to some of these communications, if we can get them at least make copies of these extra communications that we get, oftentimes at the last minute from constituents. If we could make copies of those available, I think we should definitely start doing that. The city staff was not sent that. It was sent to basically the Plan Commission and a selected number of city council members. I immediately forwarded it to city staff, and that was on Wednesday afternoon. And then today we got additional materials from them, which were two photos of Henson's other property, which really weren't germane to the case. So
Allied Waste sent you
the communication that I referred to at the beginning, yes.
Sent you the photographs of Henson?
Of Henson's property in Bloomington.
So can I reiterate what I've understood you to say?
I can reiterate what I understood me to say. An attorney on behalf of Allied Waste emailed us on Wednesday a letter outlining their objections to the permits that we approved, and then today they emailed us photos of Henson's construction waste facility in Bloomington, which, in my opinion, were not germane to the case. Because we weren't considering Henson's construction waste property. So, one more point, and then we're going to have to, give her a copy, please. And I agree that we should make these available to the public. And if we can get them in time to get them into the record, I agree that we should do that. Oftentimes we do not. I mean, into the packet. Oftentimes we do not.
The way you said the sentence, it sounded as though you might have gotten this communication after you decided on the special use.
No, ma'am.
You didn't mean to say it that way, but
I got it on Thursday before I came to. We all got it on Thursday. I don't know what time. Early this afternoon.
I got it this afternoon.
Early this afternoon, yeah, noonish. I think. That's when I saw it. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, yeah, we were emailed on Wednesday afternoon and Thursday afternoon the materials from the attorney for Allied Waste.
And we is,
Apparently, not everybody on the Plan Commission, several of us on the Plan Commission, and 3 city council members.
thank you for your time. How will you correct these minutes?
We've already approved them, so
Get you to rescind or amend?
they're fine. Thank you.
You have to finish up the agenda.
I have to finish up the agenda. Okay, let me find the agenda. Do we have a staff report? There they are.
Just a couple of real quick notes. The cases you've heard earlier in November on the North Willow Road annexation, that case was withdrawn. And our staff planner, Rebecca Bird, has moved to Wokingham, England, and we'll miss her and wish her good luck.
Yeah, that's rough.
And we are doing recruitment for the planning positions.
Jeff
So that'll
hopes
be
so.
through the holidays, so next, yeah, we're down to 25% capacity, but, so that'll extend into January. So if you know qualified people for the positions, have them look out for that. And also wanted to note that the city council's working on a set of council goals. They've had several meetings, and I think they'll have another one on the 16th. And many of them pertain to planning goals. And at some point, there will be some public input to those, a survey or something of that nature. So, eventually they'll come around to the Plan Commission on different planning studies that they've asked us to do.
That sounds interesting. Thanks. I don't think we have a study session, so we're adjourned.